Good.
And so that's a matter.
Yeah. But so one of these days I'm going to do that.
Oh, I might call you.
That we have to.
Tell me you got it.
If you're not there, I'll say, Jeannie, you need to book a flight.
We'll be on our way.
That's your
Get on out here.
dream car. In your dream car.
Actually, I think she would like.
Okay, just a notice that we will begin the meeting in 1 minute. That'll give the opportunity for the technician and the green room to get everything ready.
It's just PDF straight as scan.
We should paint it green.
Phones. No, I have it now. I just, when I looked at the way you had it, it looked like it was better organized. No, it's just, files,
You tap him on the arm if you need a break. This could be,
that
well,
is the biggest thing. The whole thing is, yeah, you gotta re-rotate it. Oh, okay.
yeah.
So you do have to re-rotate it.
1 hour, we'll break.
No, I haven't tried opening it twice. I haven't really looked at that. It's a good question.
We can?
You're going to add a pledge. She didn't put a pledge on here. You
I know,
wanna
I
add a
will
pledge?
do that.
I'm gonna
I wrote
sell
that
my
down.
house, and I had to do
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a special meeting of the Board of Commissioners. It's 3 o'clock, Wednesday, September 7th, in the governmental chambers, 400 boardmen, to go over the 2012 budget discussions. If you have a cell phone, please put it on silent or vibrate. As a reminder, if we do not complete the budget as of presented today, we will continue the budget as it is presented, plus deliberation tomorrow between 6 and 9 here at this location. The meeting today will be from 3 to 6 p.m., and we will take an hour break. Then we have a regular scheduled committee of the whole meeting tonight at 7 p.m. That would be public health and safety. So with those announcements, also I was just told that Commissioner Wheelock is on his way. He'll be running a little bit late due to some internal business on his family business. So we will start with the pledge. If we could stand, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have the, Bonnie, if you could call the roll call attendance, please.
Commissioner Fleece?
Present.
Gilman? Henschel?
Present.
Limcool?
Here.
Maxbauer?
Here.
Richardson?
Here.
Thomas?
Here.
Wheelock? Inman?
Here. And then we'll record when the Commissioner Wheelock enters into the chambers. The next item is public comment, and we'll have the clerk read the rules of public comment.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. A, any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. B, no person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairman shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Okay. Now is the opportunity for any member of the public to address the Board of Commissioners. If you could state your name and address for us, we would appreciate it. And also, so you know, there's another public comment section at the end of the meeting. So
I don't know if I'll be here.
You're all set.
My name is Bob Donick, 1708 Comanche Street, Traverse City, Michigan. Commissioners, today we'll be discussing budgets and also discussing the livelihood and the future of 11 custodians. Some of them are here today, so you, the county commissioners, can see up close and personal whom you'll be affecting with your decisions. Some are single parents and some are the sole income earners for their families. After seeing the bids, I do not believe the county would be receiving the quantity and quality of service that you received today. Please look close at the bids and hopefully you will see that all the services are not equal. Mr. Loya states that privatization of the custodial service will save the county about $190,000. I would beg to differ, as the city of Traverse City pays 26% of the custodial services. I don't see the county saving $190,000. I ask you to please consider carefully about privatization and ask yourself these questions. Are lower costs based on less service? Are savings based primarily on cutting wages and benefits? Are expected savings adequate to justify the risk and the unknowns accompanying contracting out? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Is any
We
other?
do have
Yes.
two employees who'd like to speak.
Sure. More than welcome.
Karen?
Come on up. You can state your name for us.
My name
Once you sit down.
is Karen DeWater. I live at 11939 Merritt Street in Fife Lake.
Okay.
I've worked for the county for 9.5 years, and I would like to take this time to thank Ross Richardson for taking the time to talk to me and job shadow me. That told our crew he cared if we were laid off or not, but most of all, he saw what type of work we do. Our staff has a lot of support from the other county employees that do not want other services privatized. They support us not only because they know us and trust us, but because we know who needs to be in the buildings after hours and who shouldn't be there. We add a level of security after hours. Letters and emails were sent to each commissioner stating the importance of the security of our buildings. DK security depends on us as much as we depend on them. We not only secure the buildings and surroundings, but we also keep an eye on the churches around the Hall of Justice. There have been times we've had to call 911 to report that we've saw the doors open at night. I've been a good, hardworking employee for the county, and I would like to keep my job, and I hope you please don't outsource us. If you have any questions, please contact us, and we'll answer any questions you have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming this afternoon. All right. You also have someone else?
Hello, my name is Donna Gonder. My address is 8680 South Schaumburg Road, Cedar, Michigan. I've been with the county for 5 years. I've worked in the Hall of Justice, and we try to do everything we can for our employees and for the county in general. And we don't want to obviously privatize. We know that you guys ultimately have the decision, but I believe, on talking to the staff at the hall, that they are very much against this, and we take pride in what we do, and we hope that ultimately you consider what the costs are going to be. I know that you have some figures, but I believe there's a lot more to this job than just doing carpets and doing cleaning. We have a very good relationship with our people, and they feel very secure with us. And I hope that you ultimately make the right decision. Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming. Any other member of the public? Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Hi, my name is Cindy Dodson. I live at 2013 Sparling Road, Kingsley, Michigan. And I work for facilities management as a custodian. I clean the Dennis W. Finch Law Enforcement Center. This is a joint building which houses the Grand Traverse County Sheriff's Office and the Traverse City Police Department. I've cleaned there for 9 years. I'm a single mother raising 2 children. If I lose my job, it won't be because I'm doing a poor job at the LEC, but rather it will be due to poor economic times. It will have a huge impact on my life. There should be a lot of things looked at when considering privatization. There are a lot of confidentiality issues in my building. They trust me. I even had a sergeant tell me that it is about peace of mind too. He knows that when I clean the locker room, he can leave his personal things and I won't touch them. I always try to go to the extra mile to accommodate the building's needs. I thoroughly clean the Detective Bureau twice a year, where confidentiality is of the utmost importance. You won't find extra services like that from a private company. My building is a 24/7 building. It gets a lot of extra wear and tear. I clean the carpets when they need cleaning, not 2 times a year like the private company plans to do them. Cleaning this building is a big job. I clean after 100 to 200 police officers a day. They have become my friends. I just hope you give this serious thought to the privatization of the custodian staff and the impact it will have on the people we serve.
Okay, thank you for coming. Any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Yes, sir.
I'm Michael Green, custodial supervisor. I live at 9890 Hannah Road, Kingsley, Michigan, and I've been with the county for about a year and a half now. One of the things I can understand why you're looking at making this possible decision here. Business-wise, it makes sense because it is a lot less, but there's more to it, I think, than just that. One thing I wanted to, point out to you the mission statement of the Facilities Department. Facilities management strives to maintain county-owned facilities in a manner that will protect taxpayers' investment and expand facilities as needed to continue quality services to customers and employees. I'm not sure if doing this is going to do what the mission statement says. And so I just want you to really consider, if you talk to other counties or other municipalities who were privatized and it didn't work and they had to go back, this is going to be a lot harder to go back than it is to decide right now. The first year savings isn't going to be that much because of unemployment. Most of these people, the jobs that they can get are probably going to be 60% or less of their pay that they're currently making with no benefits. So it's really going to affect a lot more than just the bottom line. So just want you to think hard about it, and I know it's a tough decision. The ultimate decision is going to be up to you, and we have to respect what you have to do. You have a tough job.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak under public comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is the 2012 overview, and County Administrator Dennis Aloya and our Finance Officer Dean Bott have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioners. We're going to keep this brief. I think you've had about 2.5 weeks to go through this budget. Hopefully, we've answered most of your questions. I think we've answered all the questions that we received from you so far. Just to summarize, this budget is a 4% decrease from this year. It represents elimination of about 15 positions. It also affects 9 programs, either eliminating them or eliminating an appropriation of them that kind of sets us aside from involvement in them. An example, TC Talus, economic development. So it would eliminate our direct involvement in those. I want to point out, as we've talked many times, that budget is a plan, and that once you adopt it, it's modified throughout the year. And I think it's important to keep that in mind because we'll never get every piece of this completely to your liking. I think that will have, some of this will have to play out over the course of the next several months. One example of that would be the furlough day discussion. While we've included in here a recommendation for 2 furlough days or some other options, those things have to be negotiated, and we will have to have more discussion with you about how that can actually take place, or how we can save a similar amount of money if we're not able to negotiate furlough days. So some of this, there's a place in the budget for it, but it will require additional discussion beyond these budget hearings. Major decision points of this budget include a decision that was made by the previous county board, and the only decision on record in terms of fund balance. The board last year, when they set their budget, directed us to use $625,000 of fund balance for 2011 and $625,000 of fund balance for 2012, maintaining us at our policy level of use of fund balance. So we included that in this budget. There's $625,000 of fund balance already in this budget. I'm sure we'll have more discussion about that, but it's important to bring it up because I know that philosophically there will be some discussion on the board of whether that is an appropriate amount to use or not. And a couple of board members anyway were not involved in that decision. So, we're going to have, I'm sure we'll have some discussion about that. We made a recommendation this year. You know, we had to cut about $700,000 earlier this year, and we had a finance committee that was set up to work with us to make those cuts. And during that time, Dean and I presented a proposal to you that asked you to consider using about $800,000 in excess tax delinquent money to pay off the 2 years that will be remaining in 2012 and 2013 of road bonds. And we have included that recommendation in this budget. Now, what that does for you, besides paying off one-time expenses that go away, it frees up some money in the general fund so that we can get back on track towards doing maintenance and other capital improvements that we've let go these last couple of years. And the reason we were primarily able to let those go was because we had spent $800,000 to $1 million over the previous 3 or 4 years on our 5-year maintenance plan. So we were able to bring things up to a really good level, and that allowed us to hold off for a couple of years. But our point is, this year, it's time to start getting back to doing some of the capital things that need to be done in the county. So we've made that recommendation to move that money and do that over 2 years. Included in this is a savings of $700,000 in insurance costs, which we'll be discussing during this budget, but we'll be discussing at length over the next month and a half, which will have us looking at some different proposals for health insurance for all our employees. And as you already know, we're recommending we look at HRAs, which are high deductible plans that won't, with a supplement provided by the county, which will not affect how employees see their insurance, but should be a really large savings. But we need to get some commitment from you on that's a direction you're willing to go. We talked about furlough days. We also included in here a $76,000 reduction in travel. The travel budget, when you look at training, conventions, and travel line items, is over $400,000 for the county. And the convention line item alone, I think, is roughly, don't take me this exact, it's around $110,000. So at the suggestions of several employees, department heads, and I think even a couple of commissioners, we said, maybe we can forego travel conventions for 1 year and look at doing something with that. So we put a placehold for a savings of $76,000 in here, but we need to work with you to determine how that will take place. Will there be a moratorium on conventions next year? We have to have some discussion with you about that. And then, of course, you've already heard today the very difficult decisions that you have before you concerning contractual services, particularly as it relates to the custodial employees. We cut 9 positions last year. The last time we made major reductions in this county was 2003 for 2004, and we cut 22 positions. This budget has 15 cuts in it, and is supplemented in a couple different ways by changing insurances and those kinds of things. And I think it's important to state that that both Dean and I feel very strongly that that this is a decision that is it's a financial decision, and it's based on commissioners' suggestions over the last 2 years that we need to look to outsource services. where we can. But we recognize the impact on employees, and we also recognize the fact that employees have given in other ways, such as the change to paying a 6 and 8% copay on health insurance premiums. I want to say thank you to the commissioners that were able to fill out the matrix for us. Dean and I use that as a guide. We'll see how well it worked when you start talking about the budget to see how well it followed what you wanted. But that was very helpful to us. We used, once we got through some of the bigger things, we went to the matrix to decide what other things and what programs we could look at reducing or eliminating. And, I have to say, we were pretty impressed. The commission was very much together on many of those items. There was not a lot of difference, and if you had a chance to study that at all, it gave us some good information, and hopefully that'll be the start of using that in the future as well. This budget is by no means perfect. We know that. It was a little easier this year. We didn't feel we were guessing quite so much as to what commissioners wanted to see, but we know there'll be changes that you make. For the new commissioners, the way we found best to do this is after we go through meeting with departments and then you start your deliberations. What we typically do is we use this budget as the base, and then you make changes to this budget. That seems to be the easiest and most expeditious way, is use it as the base and change it the way you want to change it. That way you don't have to go through every aspect of the budget. So that's how we've done it in the past, but of course that's your decision as a board. With that, Dean and I will take questions afterwards, and over the course of these budget meetings, I'm going to turn it over to Dean and let him spend a few minutes talking to you about revenues.
I'll start with, Dennis mentioned the fund balance. With the $625,000 that we have in this recommended budget, that leaves us just slightly above our targeted fund balance at 18%. The exact amount is in the $112,000 range, so we're just slightly above that target at the end of 2012. The general fund is obviously the main budget that we're going to discuss and deliberate. All the other budgets and the appropriations are built out of the general fund. But I'm going to comment just briefly on the revenue line items. In the budget manual that you have in front of you, in the general fund alone, there are 175 different revenue line items. I have detailed documentation on all of those revenues. The main revenue source, however, is our property tax revenue. And in the non-departmental tab, it's line item 403, if you want to take a look at how we estimated or projected what that revenue will be for 2012. I'm not going to walk you through that process, but there were a number of key assumptions that were used. At this point in time, we have no idea what taxable value will be, next April when we get our equalization report, so we have to estimate what that will be. So that is one key assumption. We're using the 2011 taxable value as the basis for projecting 2012 tax revenues for the general fund. Georgia would have to do that also for the Commission on Aging Fund. With that as the base, we are very much aware of the MTT and Board of Review losses that we've experienced to date. Built into that tax estimate is $110,754 for potential losses. It's all documented in the note for that line item. There is no increase in taxable value estimated at this point. We're keeping tax revenues flat. We're not building in any increase. We do have an amount that is in that line item for the personal property tax discovery amounts that Lori Spencer and her staff have identified. That is a $50,000 amount at this point. That's only about 5/8 of what they have identified. We are also not building in any CPI increase. Taxable value is, to some extent, not only a function of additions and losses to the tax roll, we are also would benefit from an increase in the CPI based on the state's fiscal year. Currently, since last October 1st of 2010, the CPI is tracking at 3.4%. We have not built any of that increase into our tax revenue estimate. And at that point, I guess with that, that is the last of my
A couple of other further comments I want to make. One, Dean mentioned personal property. I don't know what we do with personal property. We still show it in the budget, but you know there's talk on the state level of eliminating personal property. If they eliminate personal property, that's $1,700,000 in revenue for us. I don't have a crystal ball. I have no idea what their plan is. I can tell you one thing. I've not heard any discussion of what they're going to do to replace it. I've heard counties talk about the fact that they may look at courts. You know, if we don't have personal property, the state may look at taking some court responsibility. But the point is, the state has no money to pay for those expenses either. So, you know, there are a number of things in here that your guess is as good as mine, frankly. At this point in time, we don't know where the state will go with these things. And then finally, what I wanted to say was I wanted to say thank you to all the department heads and the departments that worked with us on this budget. You know, typically what we do is we tell the departments, if you want to go talk to the county board, you can ask to talk to the board, and we ask the commissioners the same thing. I think you'll see that there's a number of departments here with specific things, but they're very few. Most of the departments understand the situation, have accepted the cuts where there have been cuts, and recognize that there's really very little we can do in this kind of an economy, and have been very forthcoming with us in recommending changes that would help keep the numbers down or reduce down programs where not needed. So thank you to all of them. And that's really what we have.
Okay, so does that conclude your report on the overview and available revenues?
It does.
Okay. Keeping in mind that we have department presentations, and after that, either probably at the next meeting tomorrow, we have the deliberations. Does any commissioners have any comments or questions regarding the overview report or the available revenues that they would have for our county administrator or our finance officer? We'll start with Commissioner Maxwell and then Commissioner Thomas.
Dennis, if we do not get concessions on the furlough days from unions, and we were not successful with the personal days with all unions, so I'm not optimistic that we would be successful on furlough days. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what the difference is going to be if we anticipate that we would have to simply reduce hours to 37.5 hours a week versus the 2 furlough days?
Reducing the hours to 37.5 hours a week is estimated, I think, around $120,000. We have that number. I can give you that exact number tomorrow, but it's around $120,000. So there'd be about an $80,000 difference.
Okay. Thank you. That's the only question I had.
All right, Commissioner Thomas.
How does the fund balance look for this year? Are we going to use all the 625? You won't answer that.
Without doing a very detailed projection, I would say that we most likely will use the $625,000. We're slightly higher than that with the budgeted use because of some equipment that was anticipated in 2010, was not purchased until 2011. But we're still, I mean, that was budgeted, the amendment was approved by the board, but to answer your question, we will probably use that amount.
How did we end 2010, Dean, in the general fund?
We came under our budgeted use. We used, Commissioner Maxbauer and I discussed this morning. I think the amount was $1,091,000.
$1,095,000, yeah.
And we had budgeted about $1,300,000.
But the one thing, we had made an adjustment or an amendment in October to call off $300,000 in bonds. And that's a very significant part of that use of fund balance in 2010.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Commissioner Gilman, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, actually, I just had a, have we done a look at, have we gone over and looked at our relationship with the city, and as far as revenues go, are we getting, for our shared resources, are we getting an appropriate revenue stream from their use of the facilities that we have the liabilities for?
Well, keep in mind that they own the facilities with us, and they're co-owned. But the answer to that is we are not getting dollar for dollar. and that was because of an agreement that was negotiated back, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago, Commissioner?
Yeah, correct.
And basically what it did is, it said that, and I'm going to just summarize, it says that they pay their share of the ownership based on square footage, minus an allowance that was negotiated between county commissioners and city commissioners for the fact that they're paying county tax in the city as well as city tax. So it was reduced by some amount, several percentage. Is that correct, Dean?
Correct.
So, I don't know the exact numbers. I think Commissioner Inman was involved in the negotiations, actually. But I want to say if they own 26% of the square footage, they might be paying 23% of the cost.
The reason I ask is, we have, essentially, we have a situation where we have shared resources, be it the maintenance staff, taking care of facilities that are used by both county and the city, and I was just trying to determine whether or not.
Mr. Donick's comment was absolutely correct. When I say there's $190,000 roughly in savings, that's what the savings is to taxpayers, but it's not a savings to the county alone. The city pays 26% roughly of the total cost. So it would be about a $50,000 savings to the city, and, a $150,000 savings to the county. And that's a good clarification. I always talk about it in terms of total savings, but he's absolutely right. Part of that is reimbursed by the city.
All right.
Just a quick comment. There are agreements in place. There's a governmental center operating agreement which defines the city's cost-sharing arrangement with the county. We have a central records management agreement which defines the relationship there, and they do pay for their share of facilities costs for the governmental center based on that governmental center operating agreement as well.
And Woodmere is even different.
Okay. Commissioner Max Bauer and then Commissioner Richardson.
Well, I just wanted to mention, I brought my audit books, and at the end of 2009, our fund balance was $9,166,927. At the end of 2010, it had fallen to $8,100,383.
Right. Okay. Commissioner Richardson.
And if I could comment on that, Commissioner Max Bauer, at the same time that the general fund was sinking, the tax revolving fund was increasing. And if you take the two together, there actually isn't much change. But that wasn't my question. My question was for Dean Bott. You said that the CPI is trending at 3.4% right now?
That's correct, but that's based on just from October 1st of 2010 through the end of July.
Right.
And the state actually, for purposes of calculating the effect on taxable value, averages 2 fiscal years side by side, and until we have...
And last year it was 1.7, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So, but you said the budget that you prepared is based on 0% increase in the CPI, which is, the conservative approach. I understand that.
Well, and if I could, the reason is because if you recall 2 years ago, and I think with justification, the board was critical of the fact that we estimated a CPI increase, and then we didn't get it.
Right.
And so the board said, don't do that,
Right.
and so we stopped doing that.
Okay, no, I'm not criticizing. I'm just trying to make sure I got the facts straight
Yep.
here. In the non-departmental revenue section, you have the tax revenue estimated at like 21.1 some million, but then you take 97.8% of that.
The reason for that, Commissioner, was the 2011 taxable value had decreased. It was obviously less than 2010. For 2010, our taxable value decreased 1.9%.
Okay.
And for this year, the 2011 taxable value decreased 2.13%. So we're in a period where, with residential and commercial real estate going to boards of reviews and the Michigan Tax Tribunal, our taxable value for the first time for as long as I have been here has actually decreased.
So the $20,710,000 estimated tax is based on what the taxable value ended up being for 2011, rather than what we estimated last year.
Correct.
So we're trended. We now have a trend. 2 years ago, we had our first year down taxes. Last year it went down again, so now we're starting to build a negative trend as opposed to our usual positive trend.
No, that wasn't my question, Dennis.
I was just explaining it.
20.7 million is this year's taxable value extended to next year without any change? Or have you already taken a discount off of that?
What I was doing there, Commissioner, was I know what our 2010 revenue is. At this point in time, I do not know what the July border reviews are. That's all things that are done.
But you have 110,000 for that as an estimate. I understand these are estimates, but my point is that you said that it was a flat, you were taking a 0%, but you've actually built a 2.1% decrease, into the estimate for next year. Is that right?
That's correct, based on the reduction in taxable value. If taxable value hadn't changed, I would have budgeted the same amount. Taxable value decreased.
Okay. So our actual tax revenues for this year were $20,710,000?
No, I do not know what the tax revenue will be this year.
Okay.
Without scheduling in all of the border review that are in process, and this is my best estimate or projection based on what I know at this point in time.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Henschel.
Thank you. 2 years ago, Dean, tax revenue, taxable values went down, and then this year, or this last year, they went down again.
Correct.
And they went down even more, right, 2 point some percent?
We receive our equalization reports in April from Lori Spencer, our equalization director, which is a compilation of all of the local units based on, that would include all of the March border reviews. And I can't thoroughly, and at least not to your satisfaction, explain how that works, but the trend that we're seeing is that taxable value, despite improvements or construction, despite small increases in the CPI, is decreasing because of economic factors and sales factors.
Do I understand correctly, though? It went down, then it went down more, and now you're predicting it'll stay flat within this budget? Doesn't that seem a little optimistic?
Well, if we wouldn't, we also know, though, that would perhaps seem a bit optimistic, with the exception we're not building in any CPI increase. If we had a model that could actually take every parcel, there's 55,000 parcels in the county, and if we had immediate access to all of the local assessors' databases, we could really nail the tax revenue projection. I don't have that information. I mean, there are parcels that have a straightforward, the CPI is the increase, you've got taxable value going up. You have values or parcels that are going to border reviews and having, write-downs in taxable value. There's millions of dollars that are before the Michigan Tax Tribunal that who knows how those are going to be. We always roll this number forward based on the settlements. Obviously, when the county treasurer settles with all of the local unit treasurers in March, we've got our best handle on what the revenue was for the current year. But we're not through that process yet, where I can even tell you at this point in time what the 2011 tax revenue will be. This projection is based on, I take the first run through it, then I run it by the county treasurer. I mean, to date, we've had 125,000 in border review, and most of it's Michigan Tax Tribunal losses. So you try to build that all in. I mean, there's no, I'm sorry, I can't refine this any better than we have.
All right, Dennis, and then we will go with Commissioner Max Bauer.
I think, Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what's confusing about this is we don't really anticipate getting $26,762,000 in taxable income this year.
Well, when you look at the 2011 budget, we have not made all of the budget amendments for the $712,000 reduction in tax revenue that's based on the April equalization report.
So my question is, do you anticipate getting $26,762,000?
In 2011?
Yes.
No.
So, and it's going to be about $700,000 less than that. So that's the difference. That's what makes this confusing. That hasn't been amended yet. So, but it is going down, and as Dean says, remember this April we came to you and said, here's the final numbers for 2010, this April. And that's the problem next year. So what Dean does is he projects it based on that, but then we don't project, we project a conservative reduction based on what's before the tax tribunal. Because now that you can go directly to the tax tribunal and the local assessor doesn't know it, we don't always know what's there. And second, so to offset that, we didn't show any kind of an increase based on CPI because, that will change between now and when it's actually adopted. So we kind of hedge that by not figuring a CPI increase, and we can't figure the actual decrease associated with the tax tribunal. So
we do know our tax levy for the county, we're on a summer tax levy. Those tax bills went out on July 1st. There will be, we know what the levy is, but there will be some reduction for the parcels that have gone before the Board of Review. That is one analysis that the county treasurer and myself can do, provided we talk to all of the local units. But, it takes time to get that information in and to run it through the effect that it would have. I mean, we know what was levied. I'll try to have that. I did not talk to Bill about that, but we can take a look at that and see what the levy is.
My concern, Dean, wasn't so much with what we know, it's how we're handling the things we don't know. And from what I'm gathering is we're moving forward as if taxes are going to stay the same, but over the last 2 years the trend is they're going down. So I just want to clarify that is what I'm seeing here.
That is what you're seing.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Max Bauer.
Well, I just wanted to mention, since Dean was talking about the Board of Review in 2011, and I was going through emails today, and Dean sent me this. Great Wolf Lodge, we had to repay the Great Wolf Lodge in 2011, $77,855.93. And we've been using fund balance since 2008. And I got that from him this morning as well. In 2009, our revenues were short, $505,000 because interest rates went down. We took that money out of line items like the CIP. In 2010, we used $1,095,000 out of fund balance, and on top of that, our taxable values, our revenues went down $725,000 that year on top of the $1 million we spent out of fund balance. And this is just the conservative side of me coming out. And I am definitely a fiscal conservative. I don't think anybody would argue that point. And in 2011, our property values fell, and we took another $712,000 hit on top of using $625,000 out of fund balance. I know we took it again out of the CIP fund. We took $292,000 out of the facilities fund balance. And as we move forward in our discussions, I want everybody to understand that I'm simply concerned. I understand fund balance. You use it in hard times. We are in hard times. The question is how much longer these hard times are going to last. And I don't think they're going to be over anytime soon. And so I'm going to take a fiscally conservative approach.
Okay, all right, good. Any other comments or questions before Commissioner Gillen?
Just on that note, the fund balance buys us a little bit too. I mean, it has value by maintaining it, just so people don't think we're just sitting on a pile of money. It has value in terms of being able to move money, and also for the rest of the communities in the county who rely on our credit rating. So,
okay, all right. Any other comments or questions before we move on to department presentations? All right, good. We will now move on to department head budget presentations. And I guess the way we will follow this as we go to each individual department, we'll allow some Q&A between commissioners and the department head while they're at the podium. So the first one is the housing program, and John Syke, you have the floor. You can introduce yourself to the public and the...
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is John Syke, the Planning and Development Director for Grand Traverse County, and I'm actually presenting a proposal this afternoon to you. In your first seeing it, there's a memorandum that's being handed out. There are two sides to that page, front and the back. And this is in regards to the county's housing program related to the community development block grant funds that the county receives on a regular basis. There are currently 3 grants that are received from HUD that are presented to the county. There's a $300,000 biannual allocation that comes from HUD through MISHDA, and that's essentially the allocation to the county since it's a non-entitlement county. And then there's 2 other grants. There's a CDBG grant that comes from HUD, and there's a home grant that also comes from HUD. Currently, these grants are managed by the City Housing Commission. The county essentially acts as a pass-through agency, and they go directly to the City Housing Commission. What this proposal is presented to you is doing is to reincorporate those funding programs back to within the county, and so it's better under the direction of the county board, the Land Bank Authority, and the Planning and Development Department. These funds are intended for county-wide use. They are also funds that do not require any local match, so there are administration costs that can be recovered through program income related to these grants. We felt that we needed to make this proposal for a couple of the different reasons. I'd like to kind of highlight those. One is that we'd like to have our housing needs need to be coordinated better on based on input from the county board, the Land Bank Authority, nonprofit organizations, and the community as a whole. Presently, these funds are going right through the county, right to the City Housing Commission, with not a lot of input from other types of programs that we have here at the county. And it's interesting to note that there is an interest by MISHDA that they would like to see these also relocated back within the county, because they're also interested in how these funds are actually being applied to different areas within the county. Another part is that we are, as you have created recently, is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And if we have that program being established and these community development block grant funds are going to another agency that's separate, we really kind of need to coordinate these in concert together. And so we feel that this is an opportunity to really have those managed as one type of effort. Also, with the Land Bank Authority working on foreclosed properties, it would be beneficial to utilize some of these community development block grant funds for those efforts, and so they really need to be done in concert together. There's really, at this point, in addition to those block grant funds, there are some things that we feel that these programs could be managed in a way that makes them self-supporting. Currently, as of 2011, the county appropriates, in addition to those grants that come through here, appropriates another $40,000 to the City Housing Commission. We feel that we can utilize the program income currently from these grants, in addition collect another 2% that cover the soft costs of the program administration, so that we can make these self-sustaining programs, so that we can eliminate the $40,000 appropriation. These grants are intended to operate primarily on their own and shouldn't really receive a support of general fund dollars. Now, we understand that there's, if in this proposal, which we would see commencing in 2012, we're somewhat confident that we can make this self-sustaining in its initial year, but we also understand that with transitions there can be some things that are unforeseen. So we would caution you that it's our goal to make these self-sustaining, there may be some need to use a limited amount of county funds to support this, at least during the first year of transition. We are also looking to supplement this effort, if we need be, through the Housing Trust Fund, which we did set that up to cover certain costs for administration. But ultimately, we'd like to see this really being a self-sustaining program. There is a staff person that's covered through these community development block grant funds currently. What we'd like to see is have that position transition here to the county. What that would mean, though, is we would have to create a position within the county, which we kind of see as a housing coordinator that would manage this position. And again, that position would be covered through the program income of these particular grants. We're also looking at adjusting these grants. These grants are primarily for home repair types of programs. We know that there are other programs out there available through MISTA and HUD that would allow us to change the focus. It's one of our interests in not just bringing it over here to manage it within the county, but see how it aligns with other programs that we are initiating in terms of what the land bank is doing regarding foreclosed properties, as well as the housing trust fund. We also would feel that there's better appropriation, or it'd be better if this money was administered through the Planning and Development Department in supporting the Land Bank Authority in its activities, as well as responding better to the interests of the county board in its direction in terms of housing needs and housing issues within Grand Traverse County. So what I'm presenting to you today is just essentially the proposal for your consideration. Again, it's our hope that this will help with the budget situation that the county is currently in, but more importantly, I think, is to align all of the different housing efforts that the county is currently taking into one area so that we can have a better understanding of how to apply these programs.
Commissioner Gilman.
Could you, just for the sake of everybody here, and just to refresh my land bank, how do we acquire these properties?
Well, these are the community development block grant funds are not necessarily related to the Land Bank Authority. The Land Bank Authority is a separate entity. These funds are used, the community development block grant funds are provided by HUD to MISTA, and then MISTA disperses them to counties around the state. And once we receive those monies, those are used for home repair programs for people that qualify under the requirements of that program. The land bank would be a separate process from that.
Okay, well, then that brings me around to the other one. As far as, so have we been a participant in this program for the 37 years that the block grants have been available?
I don't know, but I would assume it's been quite some time. I don't know how it ended up in that these funds were directed to the City Housing Commission. I can only assume that it was done because of the lack of capacity within the county, but this program is one of HUD's, cornerstone programs that's been around for years.
And have we had any tracking so we have metrics? And in other words, is there more of a problem now or less of a problem now since this program has begun? I mean, are we doing anything positive? Are we changing? Trying to make it better so make people more self-sufficient, or are we just providing a service? An ongoing service that's going to be there forever?
Well, I think that's a good question, because I think we have the same question ourselves, and I think we don't really have a good understanding of that, because quite frankly, this has been funds that have kind of funneled through, and it's really been under the direction of the City Housing Commission, and that's why we're trying to pull these back so we can have a better handle on these, manage them, we hope and we believe, a lot more effectively and a lot more efficiently, and track that. I mean, what we've been doing so far is just really kind of gathering as much information as we know, but as we can, but we don't really know what the true impact is yet, and that's our hope by at least managing these better within the county itself.
Thanks. Okay, Commissioner Wheelock and then Commissioner Richardson.
Well, I'm not opposed to this by any sense of the word, but I think we need to also recognize that the partnership we've had with the City Housing Commission has been fairly good. I think we all question whether or not we can track the dollars as well as we think we should be able to. But the fact is, we do get a regular report of projects that are being conducted throughout the county. on home repairs, insulation issues, how roofing, septic systems, all different kinds of things that we do get of different programs that are, different projects that are being done throughout the county on our behalf with this money from the Community Development Block Grant. I do believe that in conjunction with our creation of the land bank and the housing task force, it makes sense for us to bring this back together. You know, I really do. We've created the land bank. The land bank's acquired the properties that have come back for tax sale, and most of those, you know, we have retained. We've cleaned them up. We've made them available for sale. We have a real estate agent currently marketing those properties, and we've even managed to sell a few of them, fortunately, lately. But the fact is, it makes sense for me to bring this community development block grant that is specifically tied to housing repairs and things back in and run it as part of the same program as the Housing Trust Fund that is supposed to help us develop and make available affordable housing throughout our community.
Commissioner Richardson.
I've been a strong advocate for doing something about, you know, our relationship with the Traverse City Housing Commission for some time, and I applaud you for, you know, the proposal, whether it was yours or somebody else's. I think it's a good idea. It hadn't occurred to me that you know, that your department itself would run the program, but I think that's great. You know, that you're proposing that. There are a couple of things I don't understand. We're going to eliminate the $40,000 that we're giving to the Traverse City Housing Commission, but like next year we're going to put an extra $35,000, take $35,000 of that 40 basically and put it in your department for establishing the program?
No, from my understanding, that 40,000 is something that we don't have access to.
Yeah, I think what John is telling you is that we believe, as Commissioner Richardson, I think you kind of inferred a year or more ago, that we should be able to pretty much run this program off of the revenue that we get, the administrative revenue that we get from the grants, in coupling that with potentially some money from the Housing Trust Fund or perhaps some other grants that we're out there exploring right now. So but what John is telling you, John is concerned that there may need to be a small amount of general fund money in order to get us through the first year. Okay. We think it's something under $10,000, but there's nothing budgeted.
Okay, well, I'm reading from the, you know, descriptive blurb at the start of the planning and development part of the budget, and it says, move the management of the county CDBG program to Planning and Development Department, and then number 2 says, reallocate the annual general fund appropriation to the Planning and Development Department, and it says, as the department maximizes the program income and makes this program more sustaining, this amount can be reduced in the following timeline. Then it says $35,000 in 2012, $30,000 in 2013, and $25,000 in 2014.
Yep, Commissioner, that's what they were asking for. That's not what I recommend.
Yeah, that's why.
Okay, so that's not, okay.
That's out the window now.
Okay.
Not
Well, see, I'm thinking like, okay, well, that's what it says, so, but then when you look down at the budget itself.
There's nothing.
Well, yeah, but not only is there none, there's no money allocated for another staff person, and there's no income allocated for the 18% of the community development block grant.
Yep, that's correct. We wanted to bring the concept to you, but what we intend to do is, if you're in agreement with the concept, is we will build a budget around the revenues from the grant allocations, and we'll build that staffing level in there too. You have to approve that first. So we're not going to recommend using general fund money to fund it. We're going to say we're going to fund it from the revenues that we generate from the program.
So basically what's in the budget has nothing to do with what is being discussed right now.
That's right. It's a proposal that we're making to take that program over.
Well, I thought the budget itself was a proposal.
All right, we have Commissioner Henschel and then Commissioner Lemko.
Do I understand, is this a program for housing only inside the city limits of Traverse City?
No, it's not. These funds are allocated to Grand Traverse County for use within the entire county.
Okay, and in the past, the city of Traverse City's Housing Commission?
Right, because they're an entity that would have the capacity to deal with the funds, but those, just because they went to the City Housing Commission, they were still applied on a county-wide basis.
Okay, and Who specifically is going to be administering the program if we go along with this concept? Is that you?
That's where we would have a staff person. Again, we work
So
with
we
our...
hire somebody?
Yes, and that we hire somebody, but that person would be funded through the program income on these block grants.
I'm recommending that the person would be Ginny Coulter, who's currently acting as our employee that we're paying the Housing Commission to do. We haven't had those kinds of discussions, but they would, whoever that person is, they would be under John's authority.
Okay.
John would manage them.
If I could add just to this, I mean, I think there should be a clear understanding of what these types of funds are. These are not necessarily grants that are more of a competitive nature. These are, why they're called grants, these are essentially regular allocations. If the county applies for them, they're available. In addition, so the first, there you see on my memo, there are 3 grants. The top one is the $300,000 is a biannual grant. In other words, we get $300,000 every 2 years. If we keep applying for that, we'll get that. The other 2 are extra grants that were applied and received. And a lot of this is a matter of having good communication with MISTA, and there are other funds out there available. We're also looking at opportunities for additional grant funds that will also add to the program income.
John, do you have anything that would tell us where these funds have been going historically?
Yeah, actually, I believe Jenny Coulter currently provides you with a monthly report. I believe it's in your RMA committee packets, and
Correct.
she does a clear breakdown on how these applied on all the different projects. She does a very good job in reporting that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Lemko.
Yeah, my question is have we had a discussion with the City Housing Commission and whether or not we could take over the whole housing program for Grand Traverse County? You know, I've been a strong advocate for collaboration, and I think what we're doing here is we're breaking something that's working, trying to figure out how we're going to do more here. But I'm just wondering if we've had any discussion with the City Housing Commission that we would take over the whole management of all the Housing Commission for the Grand Traverse County.
I have had discussions with the director of the housing program about this change that we're proposing. I have not talked with her about the idea of taking over her whole operation. And I would say that that would be something that I could see us potentially, if they were agreeable, transitioning to over a period of years. But I don't think it would be something that would be wise to do it, immediately.
I just don't know what the benefits would be, and I don't know what the cost would be.
Well, I think that the thing that we're trying to do here is, what we're suggesting to you is, not only will we service the whole county better by doing it through the county, but we believe that with all the new opportunities that you guys have implemented, including the Housing Trust Fund and the Land Bank, that we need to take a different look at how we're providing these services and exactly what services we're providing. I don't think you're going to see us in a year or two providing the same traditional programs that we've always provided. I think you're going to see some kind of new, innovative things that we're going to be looking at doing to kind of expand what we're hitting in terms of programs. Commissioner Gilman, you asked, well, what are we getting for this? What exactly are we doing? Well, we're doing the traditional fix-up rehab houses and that kind of stuff. There's just so much more that I think we could do that may make more sense. We're going to need you to tell us whether we do those things or not. But I think it could go well beyond the scope of what the City Housing Commission is doing. And in fact, that may be the direction that everybody needs to go. And I think a collaboration will come out of this, Commissioner, but it's going to take a little while.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Richardson and then Commissioner Wheelock.
If I could shed a little light on some of the questions that have been offered, because I've been sort of digging into this for a while. The Traverse City Housing Commission is the City Housing Commission in name only. The only relationship that the city itself has with the Housing Commission is that it appoints the commissioners who make up the Housing Commission. The city doesn't even do a fiscal review of what they're doing over there. And they actually operate as a regional, as a regional housing authority. They're servicing both Grand Traverse County and Leelanau County, with the things they do. Besides operating the River's Edge, thank you. I always get River's Edge and Riverview mixed up. River's Edge Senior Housing Development, and also
Riverview, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Don't listen to me.
You just mixed me up, man. Okay, Riverview on Pine Street, and then the Orchard Creek or Orchard Park out there in Leelanau County. Mostly what they do is administer Section 8 housing grants, which is basically rent subsidies. These 3 grants here, and by the way, all this money comes from the State Housing Development Authority. These 3 grants here are basically home repair and purchase grants that are aimed at homeowners specifically. The 2 lower grants, the Neighborhood Enterprise Zone and the Home Buyer Purchase and Repair Loan Program, are by definition only in the city of Traverse City. The other one, the Home Repair Loan Program at the top, is administered throughout the county. And when I say by definition, that's how, when the grant came from MISHDA, that's how it was defined. It had to be used in these specific areas.
How it was applied for, though.
Well, no, the grants were available for specific things. Grants were available for, because Community Action Agency is administering one in the city of Cadillac, which can only be used in the city of Cadillac. Okay? It can't be used throughout Wexford County, so.
Okay.
I'm sorry, if I just one final comment.
Go ahead.
The advantage of what's being proposed here is that once we get off and going, that there will hopefully be more grants and more things moving forward that the county can apply for, going forward. Sorry.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, Ross covered most of it. I guess the only comment that I would add is the fact that, I believe it is the intent of the land bank and the people involved in the Housing Trust Fund to create partnerships by which we can develop truly affordable housing throughout the community, and not just necessarily in the core of the city of Traverse City. I've repeatedly said, when I talk about affordable housing and helping to subsidize affordable housing, I'm not going to tell somebody they have to move from Mayfield downtown Traverse City in order for us to qualify. We have housing needs outside of the core. The problem is right now, and even a lot of these grant monies are tied to the core community,
Right.
which means we cannot subsidize that affordable housing here. But the land bank and the Housing Trust Fund gives us the capabilities of being able to enter into some of those kind of programs. We could technically, if we chose to, go out to Mayfield and build a six-unit apartment and rent it, if we want to be in the landlord business. I'm not sure that I want to be in the landlord business, and I'm not sure the county does. And that's the one concern that I have a little bit about taking over the City Housing Commission, because they truly are in the landlord business.
Okay.
But that's discussions to have as we move forward with this, but I think it's important that we have the discussion. And it's important that we bring this block grant back into the county's housing task force to move forward with this.
Okay, Commissioner Gielman.
So we're bringing this in, as Commissioner Richardson said, partially to expand and gain more grants for this particular purpose in our community. Is that a part of it? Is that accurate?
Well, I'd say what you're doing is you're returning them back to the county where technically they should be at the county. I mean, this is a very unusual type of relationship for most communities in Michigan. So what you're trying to do is get a better handle on monies that are really appropriated for the county for application on a countywide basis.
And there's a couple of things. Now, as far as bringing back, right now, is the county's liability for this employee who essentially handles this now, do we have any liability as
No.
far as longevity or anything?
No.
Okay. But we would after this?
Yes.
Okay. And do we expect, realistically, these grants to remain consistent from here on out?
Well, the Community Development Block Grant Program, like I said, is kind of the cornerstone of HUD. It's been around since 1974. It would be highly unlikely that it's what it is the primary means for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to disperse funds through communities throughout the United States. There may be other types of programs that come and go, but all I can say is what's been happening over the last 30-plus years, and it's highly unlikely that's going to change a great deal. I mean, I don't know for certain because these are certain uncertain times, but that program is pretty solid.
Yeah, in fact, the indications we're getting from the state is the things that you've done to set up a housing trust fund and develop these systems are probably putting us in position to get considerably more opportunities for grants than what other communities may have, because you're the first one that did it. I mean, right now, we've got an application in for $800,000. Whether we get that over 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, indications are we're going to get a good bit of that money. And I would say this to answer, if the next question is, what happens when they dry up? When they dry up, the program ends. That's what this board's position has always been.
Commissioner Lemko.
Yeah, it just seems to me that I've been to NACO meetings and still get some of the reports back from the National Association of Counties that the federal government keeps threatening that they're going to get rid of this CBDG funding. So, you know, I think it's one of those fights that NACO always goes to bat for, because it is so important for our communities. But it always comes up on budget times that this is one of those issues that they want to cut out. So I would not say, Jason, that this is one of those guarantees things, but it's one of those things that we have to continue to lobby Congress for, to make sure that we continue to get these kind of funds.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Before I go to Commissioner Max Bauer, are at this time is staff asking for the board to determine directive on this proposal, or will it be at a later date?
In the past, you have always just heard these issues on the first day, and then you've taken them up later in the budget process, but I'd be perfectly fine if you want to address it now, and then that gives us direction to start instituting it into the budget.
Commissioner Max Bauer.
Well, I think this is a good idea. The way it's set up presently, there's no accountability. My only concern is creating a staff position and have it, if funding disappears, have it stay. That's the only reluctant.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. I would never recommend that we continue the program if the funding isn't there to support the program. I don't think we can.
Does the commission feel comfortable at this time to make any motion to?
Sure.
Okay, Commissioner Wheelock.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to direct the administrator and the director of planning to move forward with the procedure by which to bring the CDBG housing grants in under the umbrella of the county, and notify the City Housing Commission as soon as possible that as of January 1st, the county will be administering this program.
Support. All right, moved by Commissioner Wheelock, seconded by Commissioner Henschel. Move forward with the housing program recommendation.
I think it's important that we let the Housing Commission know as soon as possible that we are going to make the change. They have a budget also.
Sure. All right. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Gilman,
Yes.
Henschel,
Yes.
Lemko,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yep.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Fleece,
Yes.
Inman.
Yes. Motion passes with no nays. All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate your coming. We will move on to probate court. Thank you for coming this afternoon. Get yourself introduced.
Hi, I'm Shar Fay, the probate register for probate court. My request is much simpler than probably anybody else's today. In reviewing the memorandum from Dennis Aloya and Dean Bott on their 2012 budget recommendation, a part of their recommendation under the capital improvement program is for $50,000 appropriation for imaging programs. I'm here on behalf of Judge Stowe. He would like me to ask that you consider approving that and then allocating it to the probate court. Currently, we've already done, I believe, imaging for both circuit court and district court.
Right.
Judge Stowe serves both circuit court and probate court, so he currently uses the imaging program for circuit on the bench and in the courtroom. He would like to use imaging for probate court as well, so that everything is consistent. And that's all I'm here to do, is make a request. I understand there are 4 departments that are asking for money for imaging, and so I'm just here for a personal request. for that 50,000, if it's approved as recommended by Dennis Aloya and Dean Bott, that it be allocated to the probate court.
Okay. Any comments from Dennis or Deed on this before we open it up?
We agree this is a need in probate court. What we've done in the past is we've asked you to make an ongoing allocation for imaging, and then what we do is we have the committee sit down and look at all the requests that we have in. I think right now there are 4 requests in, there may be others, and then kind of prioritize them in terms of how they should be, how we should administer the program. And so my suggestion is that if the board concurs, we leave the $50,000 in there, and that we let the committee do their work with the probate court, and come back with a recommendation on how to implement next year.
All right. Comments, questions? Commissioner Henschel.
The Register of Deeds has a technology budget. Last I looked, it was about $250,000, and there's no plans to use that other than the books we bought this year.
All right.
Is there any way that can be used for imaging in courts, or is that only for Register of Deeds?
No, it's very specific in the law. That's a special fee that was put in place to enhance technology in the Register of Deeds office. Our Register of Deeds has been very cooperative and I'm going to say, giving a liberal interpretation of that wherever she can. But I think this would, go beyond that. So,
Okay.
But she does help us in other areas, Commissioner.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Wheelock.
Dennis, is there, and I'm sorry, it was probably late when I got to that part of the budget, is there money for imaging in this 2000?
$50,000 we've earmarked for imaging for next year.
And probate court's anticipating $50,000 is the need for them alone?
Well, I don't know exactly what the need is. Typically what we do is we have to do a study of what the need, an actual study of the department and what the needs are. We have that study going on at circuit court right now. We are in the actual implementation of imaging, I believe in the civil division of district court. Is that correct? So we're in various stages of implementation. The first thing you have to do is go into the department and do an assessment. I don't think we've done an assessment of you, have we, Shar?
No, but I have met with Don, and he did give me a recommendation. He thought that it would take about $70,000 for implementation for our court. I did talk to him this morning to ask, is $70,000 what you're really thinking? He said, well, I really think we could work with the $50,000, which I was surprised. So I did ask him this morning.
So it's, all these departments have important needs, but I think we need Don to do the evaluation because we're in the assessment phase of circuit. I'm sure circuit's going to come back and say, now implement. And, then we need to do some assessments of the next phase. For the new commissioners, what we did is we bought a system 3 years or 4 years ago.
Probably more like 4.
4 years ago that allows it, that is an expandable system, and we said we're going to start with a couple of departments. We started with prosecutor, finance, and who else?
Friend of the court.
Friend of the court.
And the county clerk?
Yeah, part of the county clerk.
Okay.
And we did imaging there, and then each year, as money's allowed, we've added a few more departments, doing the assessment and then do the implementation. So I would encourage you to follow that same process and allow that committee to kind of review these and see which has the biggest impact on us in terms of efficiencies and employee savings and those kinds of things, and make recommendations. And I think that's the appropriate place where that belongs.
In addition to the monetary concern, there's also the IT department works very closely with the departments to go through the process. And these do have to be scheduled through IT's availability too, so we also have to be aware of their limitations as well.
I guess my point is that I'm sure Don, as he's talked with Shar, I'm sure he's talked with the other 3 departments and said, yeah, this would be great for you, and this is what it'll cost you. But what we have to do is go back to Don and say, now you have to tell us where's the biggest bang for the buck if we only have $50,000, and then kind of prioritize what we do. And that usually is what we do coming in November, December of this year to prepare for the first of next year.
Well, maybe if the judges did insist on frisking everyone at the door, we'd have more funds to do things like this.
I think we need to do the frisking thing.
Yeah, I think that it's really important that we do this. Now, we're only putting $50,000 in the budget for all departments?
That's correct. Yeah.
So we're really, how much more do we need to have for future?
Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I couldn't tell you. Oh, absolutely. Our intention is someday to be paperless.
For the
in this
whole
county, for the
county.
whole county.
Yeah.
Right now, we've got, and
Commissioner
I'm
Henschel.
sure I'll miss somebody.
I see
Part of
Commissioner
district,
Henschel.
part of
He's
district.
smiling.
The rest of us are all
Right now, we have
stacked.
friend of the court paperless, part of circuit, district court, part of district, finance,
Some
HR.
aspects of human resources contracts.
so we're,
coming
we're
through.
getting through some of the immediate needs, kind of the pressing ones where it was real manpower intensive, but there's much, much more to do. And yes, I think last year, I want to say, and this, I might be wrong in this, 75,000 in imaging last year? This year?
That was higher than that.
Was it higher? I can't remember the number. This is a lower number. How much?
88.
Could be, 88. So this is only, we only recommended 50 in there, but, if you want to expand that, when we get into the budget deliberations, we can look at that. We just have to find some place to cut it to come up with that extra money.
Well, at one time, we had talked about the remonumentation as to whether or not we should bond to be able to finish all that. And I'm just wondering if this is an opportunity that we might want to look at that, as how do we take and implement this throughout the whole county? What would it cost us to do it? How could we get there in a faster point of view? Do we want to do it faster? Can we do it faster? It's just some of the questions I'm asking to look at, to be able to say, let's not look at what is today's budget. Let's look at the bigger picture to figure out where are we going to go with this thing in the future, and how many years and how much money we're going to take to be able to get us there.
I think that's a good idea.
I just really think that we need to be, we got to stop being so focused on today's budget. We got to start looking at the budgets in the long-term 3 to 5 years, and I think that's a necessary thing that we need to continue working toward.
Yeah, good comment. Any other comments or questions on the probate court presentation? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are we also going to talk about their reduction? I see they have a reduction in staff there.
Actually, we're
We
recommending...
actually added a staff?
Yes, I can talk about that for a minute. Stay sharp, if you wouldn't mind, just to support this.
So as long as she's here, I
One
just
of the issues that I had was a concern over the amount of money that was in arrears in the court system and in the sheriff's department, and I talked about it in the budget letter, and the fact that I think there's $6 or $7 million in family court primarily, right, Shar, or is it in?
Wait, I'm sorry, I don't know. Greg is here for it.
Yeah,
Family,
Greg,
though?
which court? Is it in family?
It's in family.
Primarily? And what we did is we assessed with the individual courts the likelihood of combining that somehow, looking at billing together, and I guess my conclusion, primarily based on a committee that Judge Stowe sat on for 5 years with the state court administrators, that because of the various computer systems, the collection systems, the different laws that they're under, that it would be highly unlikely that we would be able to combine those anytime soon. And what I also found was that in some departments, for example, in the circuit court, where there might be $6 million in outstanding, only about $1 million of it is county funds. The rest of it goes to the state and others. So where Dean and I saw potential was here in the probate court. They had a 6/10 person working on collections, and our question to Greg was, Greg, if we could bump that up to a full-time position, would we collect more than it would cost us in additional revenues? Because we'd be able to put another 4/10 of a position at it, and I think we feel confident that we'll be able to do that. So this is the place that we recommended increasing the position, because we think it will help us maximize revenues, and we'll be able to bring in more revenue in this court.
Commissioner Gilman.
And to that end, are we prepared to back off if that particular increase in time is not sufficient?
Absolutely, I am.
Any other comments on that
This
issue?
was not a request by the court. This was a recommendation from Dean and I, because we think it'll help bring in more revenue to the county.
All right, Commissioner Lemko.
Well, I think it's really important that, we're looking down the road, that we know that we're going to lose one of our judges, and how that's going to be compensated, when is that going to happen? And then also, I've got an article here talking about courts are facing budget cuts, and that they're going to have to start streamlining how they do business with the communities. So, I just don't know where that fits, and I know that Judge sat on that thing, and I know that some of the counties in the middle states had very successful ways of integrating, that all the judges heard all the different cases, and it just depended on who was on the schedule. And I just think that we need to continue to look at that kind of an issue to be able to bring ourselves into it, especially if we're going to be reducing one of our judges, as to how are we going to have it How are we going to handle it, and what is that going to do to our budgets in the future?
Well, the State Court Administrator's Office recently has scheduled a training or conference, if you will, on that exact thing, bringing all three courts together, integrating them, for every reason you're talking about right now. And so that first one is scheduled, I think, in September or October, which I plan on going to. I'm not sure if Greg does or not. Greg is the administrator for Circuit Court, then I'm the probate register. But, so yes, that is up and coming, and I plan on being a part of that.
Is that an assumption on the one judgeship for the circuit and district court, or has it been decided?
That's the recommendation that's been made by the State Court Administrative Office, but I believe the legislature has to act
Okay.
act on that.
Final
So-
reports out.
And they have not done that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Point of question for the commission. Had one or two commissioners asked between the 3 and 6 o'clock meeting for the budget discussions, if it's possible to take a 5 or 10 minute break in the interim, middle period. If that is acceptable to the commission, we will take a 10-minute break and come back at 4:35.
Thank you.
Okay, we're recessed till then. seats and commissioners to must be another meeting in the other room. Yeah, they'll join.
Just start right up.
Okay, welcome back. We are back from, officially from our 10-minute recess. The time is 4:35 p.m. And just a reminder that we have a set agenda item. If we do not clear the agenda item before 6 p.m., because we will be adjourning for an hour before our public safety and health meeting, then we will continue the agenda tomorrow, which that meeting starts at 6 o'clock. And hopefully does not go until 9, but in any event, we will now move on to the Conservation District. Lou Coulter, come on, introduce yourself, and you have the floor.
Good evening. I'm Lou Coulter, still the Executive Director of the Grand Traverse Conservation District.
All right.
And I am here to talk about the $9,000 cut that's recommended by administration to our line item. And having been here for the preamble to all this, I certainly don't have any kick about that. However, I do want you to understand how important it is to us. I think most of you know that we do value a buck at the Grand Traverse Conservation District, and 9,000 of them is very important to us. We are currently in this fiscal year operating with about a $50,000 deficit, which is about a 20% of our fund balance. And we anticipate doing that about the same next year, maybe even a little worse. So 9,000 is important to us. And I do have to say that over the years that I've been here anyway, the investment that the county has made in the Grand Traverse Conservation District really, I think, has paid off. We are, I hesitate to say it, but our staff doesn't hesitate to say that we're one of the most impactful and well-respected conservation districts in the state, and a lot of that has to do with your early investment in us back in the 80s and 90s and your continued investment. The operational funds for conservation districts are very difficult to come by, and so these funds are very important. Grants are fairly simple to get, but operational money is very difficult. This particular line item has not changed. I look back in our records and as far back as 2002, and it's been essentially flat since 2002. So it's not like we've been adding every year. Now that isn't to say that we don't appreciate the $150,000 you've put into the building that we're occupying and which you own, and we certainly appreciate the $7,500 you're putting into helping us to operate that building. But this operational money is important from the overhead standpoint and has been flat for over a decade. I think that's about it. I would be happy to talk about the programs that this helps us deliver, but I think that was in the memo, at least fairly succinctly. So,
Commissioner Max Bauer and Commissioner Gilman.
Lou, for the members of the public, and myself too, how do you specifically see this reduction affecting the Nature Education Reserve, if you can summarize?
Well, you know, simply, I think simply it would be, I guess in the simplest of terms, it would be the elimination of an AmeriCorps member and a half. And the AmeriCorps members, I don't know if the public knows about this, but they are folks that are essentially paid volunteers. I think they're making the equivalent of $4.50 an hour, and we've had, I think, 5 or 6 of them in the past 5 years, and it's been incredibly valuable to our organization as we started the Nature Center up and so forth. And they have been high quality, and I think they've gained a lot from the experience as well. For the Nature Center standpoint, we have an AmeriCorps member who's delivering and creating a number of the programs there. And on the conservation side of our organization, we have an AmeriCorps member that does a lot of the work on the 3,000 acres that we manage. So that, I think, is the simplest way of putting that. Whether that's what would happen, I certainly don't, we haven't even begun to look at that yet as far as how we're going to deal with our 2012 budget, but that would be the simplest terms of how that might happen.
Commissioner Gilman.
It was just a thought. Your mission, what would you say in a sentence, what is your mission?
It's to inspire exploration, appreciation, and conservation of our natural world.
And
so
that would include wetlands and
yep,
natural
the natural
areas.
world. One area we don't do much programming in is air quality, but other than that, we pretty much.
So the preservation of wetlands would be an important thing.
Yes.
Okay. I was just thinking of the removal of some of the wetlands by the removal of some of the dams that the county's going to have expense in. I just thought I'd throw that in there. Maybe we could kind of think about that down the road, what we're going to have invested in county dollars while we're laying off workers. And anyway.
Okay. Commissioner Lemkool.
Yeah, I just would like to make a comment that for our, when we did our survey amongst all the commissioners, the Conservation District really rated quite highly in the middle of the, where we all were supporting this particular program, that they received 17 points, which is an average of 2.13, which really puts them in the middle of the 1.55 to 2.54. So, you know, I was really surprised that when we took out a $9,000 budget item out of an organization that the commissioners really support. And so, you know, personally, you know, I've been on the Conservation Board as its liaison. This is my second term around, and it is probably the single best program run by all the county government. They do not go out and buy brand new trucks. They use baling wire and duct tape to put everything together. They provide a phenomenal service. I've had a chance to go out and hike some of those trails just in the past week of what they're providing for us. The trails are well maintained. They're well used by many people. And, you know, this is just a small amount of money for us to be able to continue to keep them doing what they've been doing, especially with these AmeriCorps volunteers, because that really helps them to pay for their college education also. And so that's one of the benefits, that they get to pay that down by working in that kind of an environment. So
why don't you make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we put the $9,000 back in the budget.
Support.
All right, it's moved by Commissioner Lemkool, seconded by Commissioner Thomas to put $9,000 back into the Conservation District to have them whole as compared to last year's funding. Discussion, we'll go with Richardson and then Wheelock.
I'm inclined to support this, Herb, but I'd really prefer that, you know, we don't start, you know, voting yea or nay on each one as it comes before us, because I think we'd rather look at the whole. I personally would rather look at the whole package and then decide, you know, what we may want to restore, what we may not want, and so forth. If you understand what I'm saying. It's just easier, and otherwise then the ones that come first tend to get, you know, higher ratings than the ones that come behind.
And that was a suggestion that I had. And then we had Commissioner Wheelock, was that next?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, my two things. First, I absolutely treasure the partnership we have with the Conservation District. I truly do. I believe it makes a huge difference on our nature education reserve. It makes a huge difference on our community, and they're always available to answer people's questions. And you know, when we ask them to step up and help us with the dams problems and the removal of the dams and the drawdowns, they were right there to help us do that. And I truly do treasure that. I do hesitate to, like Ross said, I hesitate to take a piece right now. I probably support this thing, and if we have to vote on it right now, I will. But at the same time, I would like to review all of the budget and then go back and make the amendments as far as the amendments to the recommendation. And at the same time, you know, I have notes in here about things that I'd like to add to the budget, but there's other places that I have that I'm going to recommend that we take money out of the budget. So, you know, I just, it's hard for me to sit here and say, okay, you know, this is the third department, I'm already going to amend the budget and add $9,000, unless I'm willing to stand here now and tell you where we're going to take that $9,000 from.
That was going to be my recommendation. Commissioner Max Bauer?
Yes, and I would like to echo what Commissioner Richardson and Commissioner Wheelock have said. Right now, if I'm asked to vote, I would vote no. But I'm inclined to support it. My problem is I want to know what the overall picture is. I think the Nature Education Reserve,
I will
is a
withdraw
phenom-
my motion.
That's a second, agree?
Sure.
Okay, motion is withdrawn.
As long as they don't forget.
All right,
I
Commissioner.
won't.
All right, Commissioner Richardson.
And if I can just comment on what Commissioner Gilman said, I certainly don't want to have another, you know, lengthy discussion about the dam removal. First of all, the Conservation District carefully did not get involved in the political question of whether to, keep or remove the dams while the discussion was being had. And the second thing is that actually, when the dams are removed, there will be a net increase in natural wetlands from what it is right now with the dams there.
All right, Commissioner Gilman.
Well, you mean, you've decided to carry it on already, so I'm going to have to, according to the engineering study, there's going to be a decrease. And I'm going by the engineering study that was provided to me. And, you know, I mean, so it is one or the other, I guess. Which one do you believe? Do you believe the engineering study, or do you believe?
Okay, well, I've heard the engineers many times say that, you know, there's an overall restoration or an overall increase in the net wetlands, so.
All right.
We'll just let it go at that.
Yeah, maybe we'll
so.
stay on point now. Commissioner Thomas.
You like to be conservative. The reason why we took the dams out is because we can't afford to keep them. It's simple.
All right.
Okay.
We can stay. We should.
But this does matter going forward in the budgeting process. I mean, we're being boxed in to an expense that we cannot. I mean, you heard on the radio the other day that well, they got all the funding in a row if we can come up with another $1.5 million. Where's that going to come from? And you know, at one point it was under $1 million to repair the dam so they'd last for 30 years. I'm just trying to put some kind of.
That's simply not the case.
All right, we'll stay on focus, but I appreciate the side opinion. All right, any other comments or questions on the Conservation District presentation or budget?
So Lou, when's your retirement party?
Don't know.
You know when you're leaving yet?
Haven't got the replacement yet.
The board is selecting interviewees, and I expect to be in transition by Thanksgiving, maybe sooner.
Well, Commissioner Richardson.
You said our funding level has been relatively flat.
In that line item, right.
For how long would you say?
Well, I checked back to 2002.
Oh, really?
It was 35.9 or something back then.
Okay, thank you.
And just to let, I think you ought to bring up the fact how you're going to come up with that $50,000 shortfall is through the swing shift with the stars. And you might want to promote that a little bit.
That's certainly part of the strategy.
All right, we have Commissioner Henschel and then Commissioner Thomas.
Lou, how many, other than the AmeriCorps paid volunteers, how many full-time employees does your organization have?
12 full-time, 2 part-time year-round, and then 4 to 5 seasonal, including the AmeriCorps.
What is, just best guess off the top of your head, what would you say is the average cost per employee for salary and employee costs?
35,000. I can get back to you on that,
Okay.
but that'd be my guess.
Okay, Commissioner Thomas.
Lou, I can say this and get away with it. You're way too young to retire.
All right.
May I speak to that? May I speak to that?
You look young.
Thank you. because of our relationship. I have valued it hugely with staff, with the board. The county has meant a lot to me over my 23 years. And so have a lot of other things. And it means enough to me that I want to let go and have somebody that's as hard charging as I was 23 years ago move it on. And I'm sorry, but, talking
That's
about the
very
dams
nice.
gets me worked up.
All right. Now, we appreciate the motion.
And those employees are committed to conservation, and that's why we can get them, most of them they're really underpaid for what they do.
Yeah, I think they'd probably agree to that.
All right, thank you, Lou.
Thank you all.
All right, we will now move on to Parks and Recreation. Jason Jones. I don't know if we have anybody else available, but Jason, if you get yourself introduced for the audience.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jason Jones, Grand Traverse Parks and Recreation Director. Last week, Friday, the approved budget, the budget that was approved by the Parks and Recreation Commission, was emailed to each of you as commissioners with the narrative in regards to reducing our general fund allocation by $50,000, as well as our general operating budget. Just to give each of you a heads up, the Parks and Recreation Commission did approve this budget as of Thursday of last week. So there is a decrease in the general fund allocation of $50,000 from some of your original, the information that may be in your budget booklet, but we did reduce that based on a suggestion by Dennis and Dean.
Okay. Any questions of Jason? Commissioner Max Bauer.
Jason, I'm going to start with Twin Lakes. 11 months ago, the Parks and Rec Commission did a strategic plan. And in the strategic plan, they want a business plan, asked for a business plan for Twin Lakes and the Civic Center. I know that has since changed. Now I believe it's Twin Lakes and Power Island. But during our budget, Parks and Rec budget meeting, where we discussed it, you said that you anticipate that business plan is going to be completed by the end of this year. And in all likelihood, it would require a full-time caretaker at Twin Lakes. Why then, if you anticipate to have the business plan completed, and in likelihood it will call for a full-time caretaker, why then did you reduce that position by 30% versus cutting expenses at Eastling Pool or the Civic Center or elsewhere?
I don't believe that my statement was in all likelihood it will require a caretaker. And if I did say that, it was a mistake. I don't know what the business plan will contain. It would make sense, the 2 or 3 options that I know of for the future of Twin Lakes and generating some new revenues that we've lost since 2008, would require a similar standard of care as to what we have now. If we have our business plan done by the end of 2011, we would begin implementing in 2012. It would take some time to get implemented, and we have seen a decrease in the usage at Twin Lakes since 2009. Therefore, it would make sense for us to reduce that full-time caretaker position by approximately 30% while that business plan is being implemented.
You did say in all likelihood, and you said you were asked during the meeting that if your intention was to restore that position to 100% in 2013, and you did say yes.
Okay.
And that's why I'm asking the question.
I may have misspoken.
The next question I have is on capital. You recommended, or Dennis and Dean recommended, 8 picnic tables at Maple Bay. Not Maple Bay, Twin Lakes, I'm sorry. Why did you recommend that versus, for instance, replacing the pool doors that need replacing? And for those of you who are sitting on the county board, just so you know, my husband was trapped in there 5 years ago and couldn't get out because the doors, they have to chain them, or they used to chain them at night when they locked up. And he has a tendency to sit in the locker room for a little time, and they didn't check, and they forgot him. And he went out and he called 911 and said, you know, I may be trapped. If I can't figure out how to get out of here, and I set an alarm off, you'll know. So that's why I'm asking, why have you chosen picnic tables versus replacing pool doors?
The picnic tables were part of the Access to Recreation grant in the project that created, or that renovated the 4.5 acres of Twin Lakes to be a universally accessible park. These are specialized picnic tables that were part of that original plan, and they're tied in with that plan, and those were actually submitted by the facilities.
So it's grant money?
Those are tied in, or those were input to or put into the budget by facilities management.
Okay, so it's grant money or it's general fund money?
No, they're being recommended to be funded out of the capital improvement fund.
Okay. Moving on to the Civic Center. It is the most heavily taxpayer subsidized park we have. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just a fact. And I always figure in the facilities costs, electric, power, et cetera. So I'm going to touch upon City Day Camp. At a Parks and Rec meeting, July 21st, when we were talking about the City Day Camp, you said that that rate was established for the summer and before the Parks and Rec Commission changed their fee structure. I looked, and that was not the case. Nevertheless, you may have had a verbal agreement ahead of the written ones, and I understand that. What bothered me was the next sentence in your memo, which said, due to the flexibility of the camp group to meet our facility needs, it is my intent to ask Parks and Rec Commission for a similar reduction in rate for the 2012 camp. The city paid $1,025 for the summer for a 25,000 square foot Howe Arena. And you also stated that $25 a day more than covers the electric use in sewer and water. I looked. Dean gave me the numbers, and it doesn't come close. For instance, and just so everyone knows, the city charges $85 a week for this day camp. And please understand, there's an opportunity here. The city charges $85 a week for their day camp. And the Nature Education Reserve also has a day camp. They charge $89 for half a day per week. Their weekly charge is $169 a week for a full day. So my question is, if we're going to subsidize a camp, why wouldn't we subsidize the Nature Education Reserve camp versus the city camp? And the city had revenue which exceeded their expenses in 2009 by $11,840, and in 2010, $9,805. So, why aren't you doing it?
That's a better question for the Parks and Recreation Commission. I'd be happy to have that added to the agenda, but that's a question for the Parks and Recreation Commission. In the past, we've ran programs, and the programs weren't necessarily supported by either the Parks and Recreation or weren't necessarily supported by the Board of Commissioners.
Just a question, Commissioner Maxbauer or Jason. The structure of which the Parks and Rec Commission is set under in terms of how, what we've granted you in terms of, your authority level and your operating agreement and those kinds of things. So when it comes to the budgetary issues or those kinds of things, those decisions are made on behalf of the Parks and Rec Commission, or are they made on behalf of you?
I make a recommendation to the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Parks and Recreation Commission would then approve the budget, which is what they did last Thursday.
All right, okay, all right.
And my recommendation to the Parks and Recreation Commission included the suggested $50,000 reduction in general fund allocation from Dean and Dennis.
And the Parks and Rec approved those?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Correct. And we do, the Parks and Recreation Commission did essentially approve a balanced budget, utilizing the information that was given to us from Dennis, or based on Dennis and Dean's suggestion.
Okay, Commissioner Richardson.
Can you very quickly go over how you got the extra $50,000
Sure.
out of the budget?
First and foremost, what I did is I reduced the caretaker hours at Twin Lakes by 30%. In looking at some of the figures, looking at the figures that we've lost since 2008, reducing his hours by 30% was appropriate based on the number of hours or the number of users at the camp and how those user numbers fluctuate based on some of his seasonal duties. I also worked with facilities management to figure out the costs associated with having someone step in from facilities management. I worked with the Sheriff's Department to get a ballpark figure what it would take to have someone monitor the park on a regular basis, and then worked with some numbers that we have for our park rangers at our facility to do some of the customer service and setups. The next item I did was increase user fees at Twin Lakes, and discussing that with the Parks and Recreation Commission. One of the biggest areas of growth that we've seen with parks or with Twin Lakes is for it to be a wedding and wedding reception destination or venue. And frankly, our user fees at Twin Lakes are still well below any rental fee for a facility associated with the wedding. Parks and Recreation Commission were accepting of that. We discussed adding amenities and transportation to Power Island. One of the nice things about Power Island, I guess it's looked at as a pro by some, a con by others, that to get to to camp on Power Island, you actually have to have access to a boat. And we only allow five campsites. We're going through a certification process for campgrounds through the Department of Environmental Quality right now. And once we have that certification, we can actually expand the number of campsites we have on the island. It's our intent to expand to add at least five campsites right now, as well as have our park ranger get his certification to become a captain so he can then create a ferry service back and forth from the island to the mainland. That'll do two things for us. It'll give additional access for citizens to utilize Power Island. It'll increase our revenues by charging a fee for that transportation service, and it will also increase our number of campground nights. The other items we discussed, or the other items I suggested, were increasing fees at Eastlink Pool. When we went through the budget challenges back in April and May, and there was threat of closing the pool, we had several of our members state that they would be willing to pay a higher fee in order for the pool to stay open. Based on that anecdotal evidence, I looked at all the fees, and working with the suggestion of the aquatic manager, we discussed increasing fees between 2% all the way up to 25%. When I say 25%, keep in mind that was for our daily fees, and the 25% in maximum is $1.25. So it puts us at I think our typical, with the increase, our drop-in swim fee I think then goes up to $5 from $3.75. So even though it's 25%, it's relatively minimal. And then the last $9,950 were additional line item cuts that included a variety of different line items, including travel, conferences, some supplies, as well as some some medical supplies that we have to some degree of surplus in, uniforms, some printing, office supplies, and equipment repair.
Are you satisfied with those cuts? Are you okay with those cuts?
I'm confident with those cuts. The way I looked at the reduction in the general fund allocations, we could do one of two things. We could either make a bunch of expenditure cuts, or we could create some revenue increases. I tended to look towards the positive and kind of balance. We're going to increase some fees. We're one of the few departments that actually has the opportunity to charge fees for a variety of different services. And I looked at this as an opportunity to raise those revenues to offset that reduction in the general fund.
So you didn't really go into your fund balance then?
I did go into fund balance, and it's historically, and I'm not saying that I would have a tendency to agree with this, but historically our department relies on fund balance as its third largest revenue for our department. In 2010, we were budgeted to use about $83,000 from our fund balance. In 2011, we're budgeted to utilize $83,000, and in fact, it looks as though we are going to contribute to fund balance.
Oh, really?
Correct.
And in 10, do you have the 10 numbers too, Jason?
In 2010, I don't have the numbers in front of me with what we budgeted to utilize from fund balance in 2010, but we ended up in 2010 contributing $14,000 to our fund balance. I want to say we were around $80,000 usage budgeted in 2010, but we did do well specifically with the pool in 2010. We're seeing similar numbers in 2011, and I'm confident that we will not be utilizing that $83,000 that we're budgeted for from fund balance.
Okay.
And in fact, one of the things within this budget, we've utilized, or one of the things in this budget, we're talking about reducing our fund balance. In Parks and Recreation, our fund balance is 25.9% at the end of 2010. It's our intent to utilize some of that fund balance based on a recommendation from Dean Bott to take that down closer to 10%.
Are you talking about using fund balance for operations or maybe for capital improvement projects?
This year, to help balance the budget and help offset that $50,000 allocation, we have to rely on that for operation. It's our intent to move forward with business plans at Twin Lakes and at Power Island to help offset some of the costs there. Commissioner Max Bauer mentioned earlier what each park subsidized at. In 2012, we're planning to subsidize Twin Lakes by 38%, Civic Center by 64%, and Power Island by 70%. It's the intent with those business plans to help get us off the fund balance life support and move towards more positive revenues in order to offset those operating costs. So the Parks and Recreation Commission should be commended for putting together a strategic plan that is actually helping the Parks and Recreation Commission move in a positive direction with business plans, with master planning, safety audits, and a variety of other planning that frankly has never been done to any great degree in the Parks and Recreation Department. So we are making some positive strides.
All right. Commissioner Gilman.
On the Twin Lakes property, the caretaker, what's the primary function of the caretaker?
Primary, I can't say that there would be one primary. I think he essentially functions with three, well, I wouldn't say equally, but three main functions. His first function would be to janitorial and caretaking. Second function would be surveillance and security. Third would be customer service with setups, teardowns, giving people tours of the property, etc.
Okay, and the property is used often enough? Is the maintenance, an ongoing thing? Is it a regular, or is it something that our facilities could handle in an absence of a caretaker?
There was discussion of that. Our caretaker position totals with benefits and wages about $59,000. If we had facilities do that same job, it would cost the county probably closer to $72,000. Because of the loss in travel time, actually, for a variety of reasons, loss in travel time, the additional cost associated with, or costs associated with not being able to care for or do preventative maintenance at the park.
Does the caretaker live on site?
He does.
Full-time, year-round?
Yes.
And
we pay his.
It's right, and it's waterfront. There are people who pay for waterfront. It seems to me that's an opportunity for someone who's retired.
Quarters recently, have you?
I'm sorry?
You haven't been in the caretaker's quarters at Twin Lakes recently,
Have you?
Yeah.
Really?
I guess what I'm trying to get at is there's a balance of value here. There are probably people looking for a nice place to live, would love to take on an opportunity like this, and here we're paying. It's backwards what it should be, frankly. I think that there's a way that we could actually take advantage of what an opportunity that is on the water. And I think we should think about that going forward when we're talking about this.
All right, Commissioner Wheelock and then Commissioner Fleece.
Well, obviously, I've been connected at Twin Lakes for a long, long time. I can easily remember 3 caretaker families that have lived in the facility there. 3 completely different levels of care of the property, 3 completely different levels of customer service. I think right now, we probably, of the 3, we have the best combination of care for our property and protecting our property and customer service that we've ever had. And I've known Jim and Barb a long time. But the fact is, they truly take pride in making sure that the facility looks nice, it's clean, it's, when you walk into the restrooms, one of the things you have to remember at Twin Lakes, it's not like the facility here that people are in and out of every day. So what tends to happen is you end up with stagnant air and those kind of things, which they keep clean. And, you can walk into the restroom on an event on Saturday and know that nobody's been in here since last weekend, but it doesn't smell in here. It's clean. And they take care of the trash. The freezers aren't full of whatever somebody left last weekend when they rented it that was left in the freezer, because God knows I've been there when it has been. I think the one thing that I heard overwhelmingly when we did the master plan at Twin Lakes is the people still wanted it to be a community park. And, Chris, you talked about it last week, the idea that the park is closed because we have groups in here and, there's the discussion about whether or not it's access. There's a lot more people use that park than you really have any idea. I've rented it for soccer camps for college soccer teams and facilitated those there. We've done everything from my daughter's wedding reception was held there. We've done bridal showers there, birthday parties there, graduation parties, all different kinds of events have been held there. And, I think that's very important to the community. The one thing that concerns me a little bit, and Jason, and you and I spoke about it just a bit in the intermission, we keep raising the fees here because Twin Lakes doesn't pay for itself. But now, all of a sudden, in order to rent the Twin Lakes Lodge to hold a 3-hour bridal shower there, it's $250. Well, that becomes pretty expensive to be able to do that. It used to be $45 or $50, you could rent it for a couple hours. And we always did a good job of making sure we cleaned it up. And, I'm pretty sure that anytime I've ever used Twin Lakes, I've made sure it's in at least as clean a order as it was when we got there. But the fact is that we have to remember this is truly a neighborhood park. And the community sees it as a neighborhood park, and they want it to continue as a neighborhood park. When we did the master plan, we had a lot of discussion about whether the dormitory should be torn down, whether it should be there. And there were hundreds of people that came out that remembered coming here when it was Camp Royale and the handicapped campers, and not only those campers that were actually there as campers, but the staff that was there to work at it. And I know at least from the people in my community where I live, obviously this is 3.5 miles from my house. And it truly is a neighborhood park that we enjoy and we really want to see preserved and made available. And the one thing that concerns me is when we just say, okay, look, the idea that we pay a caretaker to be there makes it to where the price has to be this much higher in order to make it pay for itself. I don't think we can always look at making this camp pay for itself, because we have to remember we're talking about 4.5 to 5, 6 acres, depending on how you measure the soccer field into this process. But we have to remember it's a 175-acre park. It's not just that 4.5 acres. This park is 175 acres. It goes all the way out to Straight Road, and it comes all the way down through into Twin Lakes. It is a huge parcel property, and there's a lot of usage besides what you see in that 4 acres. Fleece, you and then Max.
Okay, Commissioner Fleece, then Commissioner Gilman, and then Commissioner Max Bauer.
Jason, you'd stated earlier that, if I heard you correctly, that the caregiver's principal responsibilities were, number 1, janitorial, number 2, security detail, number 3, customer service?
Correct.
Just a suggestion I might have for the Parks Board, Parks and Rec Board, and perhaps you, I happen to agree with Gilman. If you ever saw that TV program, Sharks, how would you like to have the opportunity? I thought that was a small park,
but if it's a 175-acre waterfront with all the amenities there, I think that's a golden opportunity to make money. And I think with the right type of guidance or opportunities, even to the point of if we're not utilizing the whole 175 acres, perhaps we ought to sell a portion of that and let the tax dollars help pay for the rest of it.
Can't.
But,
Can't sell it.
Okay, that was donated.
Can't sell it.
okay.
You can give it back and get the taxes, though.
But anyway, Power Island's another jewel. From a business point of view, I look at the opportunities at both Twin Lakes, Power Island, Maple Bay. They're absolutely endless. And I think the Parks and Rec Board really needs to sit down and review and maybe get some business guidance in there. But I think they could more than pay for themselves easily. And I think that's what we should be looking at. And we should be utilizing those parks on a year-round basis. The Parks and Rec Board needs to sit down and, in my opinion, have a think tank and just throw out ideas. And like I said, there's some entrepreneurial people in this community, I'm sure, that could make those suggestions to the Parks and Rec Board, which would keep you really happy, you know, with what to do with the revenue.
All right. You go ahead and respond. And then
I
will
appreciate
go
that
to Gilman.
comment, and that's something that the Parks and Recreation Commission is working on, utilizing their strategic plan. One of the things I want to, I guess, from now that our Parks and Recreation Commission has a well-defined strategic plan and how to move forward, they're moving forward in a variety of reasons, or a variety of methods similar to what you mentioned. It's been interesting as our parkland has increased with our new parcels. Our county has accepted additional pieces of parkland without necessarily understanding the long-term implications of what those parks have. And over the past 40 years since our department's been around, planning for those parks has not been done comprehensively. It hasn't been done adequately to say, how can we best leverage revenues within these parks to offset the expenditures? So we're starting 40 years in the hole with the strategic plan, and the Parks and Recreation Commission has defined that and said, we do need to sit down and think about that through budget, or through different types of business plans, through master planning, and that's a project that we are working on through the strategic plan. What we're working on right now is a needs analysis in discussing and determining whether or not the community's recreational needs are being met, whether they're being met to too great of a degree. And that's a project that's been pretty hefty. It may lead towards better collaboration between the city, the county, the school district, and a variety of different parks and recreation providers. But I think I think your comments you hit the nail on the head with the thought process that the Parks and Recreation Commission is going through right now. And as I said earlier, a business plan is exactly what we're pursuing at Twin Lakes and Power Island to start, but all of our parks will be included in the business planning process, each individually, so we can determine how best to leverage those revenues at each of the individual parks to offset their expenditures. So I think the Parks and Recreation Commission's in the process of addressing exactly your comment.
But I think their view ought to be proper utilization of each property by its own right. And I'm going to give you a short example. Doesn't compare to the opportunity that the Parks and Rec have, but I own a piece of commercial property in Benzie County, and I'm over there last Saturday night because I've got a couple guys removing the mobile home that had been a previous rental, which most of the time they didn't pay the rent. So I've been paying taxes on that property for 10 years or better. One of the young people that work for me, young guy, he's 19 years old, he's standing there looking around and he says, you know, Larry, he says, perhaps we ought to put some buildings here. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, you know, the buildings we got just south of the business that are there on consignment. He says, it won't cost you anything, and I think this would be a golden opportunity. Look at the traffic. on 31 there. It's on US 31. And you know, that was Saturday night. Yesterday morning at 8 o'clock, I made a phone call because sometimes you can't see the woods for the trees. And I had never even thought about that. It's an excellent suggestion, and I'm sure that it'll more than pay the taxes on that property. Plus, it'll give me some other opportunities that'll come all by itself. And that's what you need. Maybe you need to get some outside people, like I said, some entrepreneurial type people into a Parks and Rec board meeting and just brainstorm. Because with that type of property, I think you could really go a long ways.
All right. Commissioner Gilman.
For those of you paying attention, we're losing $60,000 a year at Twin Lakes alone. That's what it costs us to operate. Okay? Now, for the privilege of losing $60,000 a year, we're also competing against local businesses that provide the same services, that could be providing the same services at Twin Lakes if we didn't own it. Morally, having government run a business to compete with another business but has deep pockets to pay for those losses year after year, to take your tax dollars and to have those tax dollars compete against you, I just don't think is right. And I think that there is a missed opportunity here. And if the direction of the Parks Department was to seek out, as I believe was suggested by Commissioner Fleece, an entrepreneurial opportunity, somebody perhaps maybe not sell the property or sell pieces of the property because we can't, because it is encumbered, but to have a management team actually come in and do it and pay us to operate the property. 175 acres, a resort, and we could share in the profit. But instead, we're spending $59,000 a year, according to the budget at least, for the privilege of competing and continuing to lose money year after year.
Interesting comment. Commissioner Max Bauer, and then Commissioner Henschel, and then Commissioner Lundkohl.
Okay, well, I wasn't quite finished, but I was willing to wait.
Okay.
And I'm glad I did. One of the things that truly bothers me is shutting Twin Lakes to the public as much as we have. You told us it was state law, and it's not. And we have people in this community, in Grand Traverse County, that don't even know that park was there. I took out Sharon, the outreach coordinator for the Commission on Aging, out there on Friday to show her the building. She lives here. She said, I didn't know this was here. This is beautiful. And Commissioner Cass, who sits on the Parks and Rec Board, made an excellent point. That sign, when you drive by, a lot of times it's closed to the public. It doesn't necessarily say, hey, this is a county park. It says welcome groups. I mean, it doesn't look like a county park, but we can address that at the Parks Board thing. One of the things I want to mention is Jason suggested or said that they contribute to the fund balance, or have been. Please understand that that's general fund money that we give to the Parks Board that they then put in their fund balance. The other thing I want to say, and I have questions about the pool. Now, I believe that Easling Pool can be self-sustaining. I have believed it for years. It's one of the reasons I supported Lutra coming. But my question is on the fees. Now, when we increased fees at Easling Pool this year, we increased fees to seniors, I think, by, 40 or 50%. It was a substantial margin. I understand that the rates were low. We bumped them up. We also increased fees to memberships this year. Jason, did we increase fees to groups?
We did not increase fees to groups. That's the Parks and Recreation Commission did not. I shouldn't say that. It's tough to say whether things were increased or not because the Parks and Recreation Commission in April voted to restructure to create a new structure for the entire fee system. And instead of just ratcheting prices up, they said, we value other government entities. They get a tier 1 fee. We look at nonprofits with a 501c3 status as secondary, and they get a tier 2 rate. than an individual or an organization who says they're a nonprofit without that 501c3 status. They pay a Tier 3 rate. And then for-profit organizations have a fourth tier, and each of those tiers go up or increase in rate. Each of those increase in rate. So depending on how an organization or someone that was renting that facility or had a membership, or specifically your groups, depending on where they fell in that tier would determine whether or not their fee was increased, stayed relatively the same, or was decreased. It would have been decreased if an organization actually fell to a different tier by definition. So to say that fees were increased, you can say generally yes, fees did increase, but it was a change to the entire fee structure with different definitions of different groups.
Okay, my question is, the primary rental groups for full pool rental are the Coast Guard, Breakers, which is a 501c3, TBA ISD, and if my memory serves me, and it might not, you can correct me, we charge about $112 or something like that per hour for a full pool rental. Have we increased fees to those groups this year?
Those fees did not, the fees that went into effect, the change in the fee structure that went into effect July 1st did not impact those groups.
Okay.
In my proposed budget, those fees would change. They would go up by approximately 2% beginning January 1st, 2012.
Okay. And you are also recommending fee increases for lessons, and you said in our meeting 7.7%, memberships 5%, exercise groups 5%.
Correct.
And my question is, has your aquatics manager agreed to these fee changes, not only for this year, but for next year?
She has agreed to those for 2012.
That's it?
All right, we now will move to Commissioner Henschel.
The caretaker at Twin Lakes, you said their compensation package runs $59,000 approximately.
Yeah.
Does that account for the housing?
It does not account for the housing.
Okay. And I guess, how did they arrive at this position's worth this plus housing?
This was established before I was here, so I don't know that I'll be able to adequately answer that. This person, the caretaker position, is on a similar pay grade to essentially similar to a facilities management department employee, and the housing being part of their compensation. That's something that Dean may be able to shed a little more light on as far as how that came to be. That was before my time here at the county.
That issue has been raised. We are not currently charging that individual rent to live there because it's required as a condition of their employment. They're pretty much on the clock 24/7, 7 days a week, and it's an IRS. We've complied with the IRS requirements, but we do not charge them rent.
What is the housing valued at?
I don't know if we've ever done that type of an analysis. We've addressed the issue of whether or not we should impute a value and tax them for that, and the answer is there's no imputed tax value. I can't answer your question.
So they're not paying tax on that value?
That's correct.
Because I know a pastor that gets a parsonage, and he has to pay tax on the value of that parsonage.
In accordance with IRS requirements. Yeah. This is also
but we're not doing
done.
That?
This is done in compliance with IRS requirements and our condition of employment.
Okay.
Okay. We now will move on to Commissioner Lemkool.
I've got a number of questions. First of all, what is your fund balance?
Fund balance, I would project our fund balance at the end of 2011. At the end of this year, I would project our fund balance will be at $195,802.
Okay. Is the cost of the facilities department put into the Civic Center as to put it as part of your cost, or is it part of our facilities department? When they mow the lawn and all that kind of stuff, is that included into your budget, or is it just part of the facilities budget?
Facilities management work at the Civic Center is accounted for like it is accounted for any other any other department, any other budget department in the county. It is not included in Fund 208. The information I'm presenting here and the information I'm talking about today is specifically funds associated with 208, the Parks and Recreation
So
Fund.
true cost accounting, we should be including what the facilities cost for the Civic Center, and we're not doing that.
Correct, and that's consistent with every other portion of the county budget.
I just think we ought to be looking at that. Also, the Little League, the rent that we had decided, what was that rent that we decided? We forgave them the rent the first year, and then what's the rest of it?
Then they got the regular rate.
No,
Are
they
they
get
going
half
back?
the regular rate.
They're half the regular rate for
No,
2000?
half of actual cost.
Actual cost, not the regular rate. Right. Correct.
So they're up to normal.
Okay, and how long are we going to be continuing that arrangement? Have we decided that?
I think you said indefinitely. Your motion did not.
No, we're
I
not.
don't-
They go up to the full
They go
rate
to
next
full-
year,
they go
and
to the
that's,
full rate.
that
They go to the
stays.
That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Full actual
That
cost.
stays.
Right.
Full actual cost.
Yeah, okay,
Full actual cost.
okay.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page in that direction. Just to Larry's comment about people willing to rent, there's plenty of people out there who are currently paying to go live at a lighthouse, and they have to pay to be able to work and be able to work and be able to get rid of all the seagull and mosquito, or cobwebs all over the place, and it's really not a fun job. So they do pay for that, but I'm not recommending that we do that here. I do think that what we get out of there is, they do an excellent job in maintaining our facility out there. I'm just not sure to what degree, because one of my questions is what is the, if you take the full cost of Twin Lakes and divide it by the number of users, how much does it cost per person to be able to use Twin Lakes? I'm not sure we've ever really done that, because I don't know if we can even calculate how many people use Twin Lakes on a regular basis.
You could never count the users.
Yeah, I mean, we've never counted the users, but, we're declining in the actual usage for, they're paying for it. And so if we looked at just the paying people, that what we did, what is the cost per person? And I think we need to have that calculation. The other thing is that the picnic tables that you got calculated there that we would be purchasing, I calculated them, they're about $750 a piece, and I talked to Danny about it, that they're very high-quality picnic tables, but I question, the ambiance of Twin Lakes, which is a natural setting, why we would have an artificial picnic table brought in when we can get other picnic tables from one of our other organizations, the Conservation District, for $210 or something like that. But sure, they have to be maintained, but it's the question about the ambiance on what is there. The other thing I have two other things. First of all is, have we talked about turning the pool over to the YMCA? Have we had any conversation in there? I think we still need to be able to do that. The other thing is that we've talked about the Myers property, that, we weren't maintaining that, and I just really feel that we should be turning that over to the Nature Education Reserve, making that as part of that, and let them maintain that. Then they could be able to utilize that house for some of their interns as part of that process, and so all of a sudden that has value for them, and it's no value to us to be able to have it right now. And I'm not talking about the soccer fields, I'm only talking about the farm property itself. That's all connected to the Nature Education Reserve because it's all part of the Sabin Pond. Getting that said, and with all the discussion we've had here, my question is whether or not we should continue with a Park and Recreation Authority, whether we should have a Park and Recreation Board, or whether we should eliminate the Park and Recreation Board completely and bring all this stuff under our authority here completely. It seems to me that every time we have a budget discussion, there are more budget questions about Parks and Recreation than there are about any other budget that we have to deal with. So, with all the questions that we have, should we be really trying to say, look, Park and Recreation Board, we don't agree with what you're trying to do. We think we can do a better job here within us, or we eliminate the whole thing and start a Park and Recreation Authority, turn all of our parks over to them, and then get out of us having these kind of discussions on a yearly basis.
Commissioner Richardson.
I don't even know where to begin.
I was going to suggest 2 aspirins and a glass of water.
First of all, I wasn't aware that parks were considered, a profit center
Right.
for the general public. I think parks are valued because they're available to everybody, and they're generally free. People like it. One of the things that's really great about living in this community, in this county, and then actually the whole region, is the huge number of public parks that we have that are available. City of Traverse City has all kinds of public parks. I don't see an entrance fee if you're not a city resident. City obviously subsidizes them. We subsidize parks, and so on and so forth. I do think we heard from Mr. Jones about some of his ideas for not only driving revenue, but driving more use of the parks. I think the best thing we can do is to get more people to use them and say, boy, this is a great thing. I mean, Maple Bay is probably the least known jewel of the county park system. It's this huge wild area right on East Bay. I mean, it's beautiful. I've been out there in the wintertime. I've been out there in the summer. I don't see putting a toll booth at the entrance to the park. But if we can find more ways to get people to use it, that's great. The other thing I'd like to point out is that the general fund appropriation to Parks and Rec has been in, steep decline over the last 3 or 4 years. We've gone from over $300 and some thousand, I think, in 2007 or 2008, to $270,000 to $220,000, and now we're talking about, for 2012, $170,000 in general fund appropriation. Now, you can either attribute that to, we have over budgeted for it, or you can attribute it to good management by the people running it. In either case, if every department under our control had this problem, we wouldn't have any budget problems at all. And I don't see Jason sitting here asking us for more money or asking us how terrible it is that, he was asked at the last minute to find another $50,000. He found it, he's budgeted, and he should be commended for that.
Okay. Commissioner Gilman and Commissioner Max Bauer.
Well, as far as, free parks, I mean, you pay for a permit to go into the state parks in Michigan, or at least now you pay through your license if you decide you want to have an unlimited trip into the state parks. Go to Yellowstone. Go to any number of publicly created parks. And there are user fees all over the place. Try staying overnight at the campground down on 31 there. It's the fact of the matter is user fees are appropriate. And if we're looking at a loss of what accounts to 2 maintenance jobs, it's immoral. And to do so, and we're competing against our own constituents and our own taxpayers, I just find it immoral. I just don't think that it's right. I think we need to address those issues. If we have a shortfall, and we can address it in a way that makes sense, like getting somebody in there, managing it, and making it work, and be more enticing, rather than spend money to advertise to bring more people in to pay nothing, just to put more picnic tables down. I just think we need to really look at it a lot differently than we have over the years, and instead of losing money, I think we need to at least consider a different way of operating it or not operating it at all.
All right, we have Commissioner Max Bauer, Commissioner Henschel, and then Commissioner Richardson.
Well, I want to argue with one of your statements, and that is our parks are available free to everybody. No, they're not, and that's been a thorn in my side for years. Everybody in this county pays for Easling Pool, and not everybody gets to use it. And the only time that pool has been open to the public is during a spring break when the economy crashed, and my husband and I, actually my husband came to me, I went to Dennis and said, let's open it up to I believe I have the floor, Commissioner.
I just have a question. You were opposed then to the increase in fees that he just discussed.
I didn't say that.
Commissioner Richardson?
I asked-
Commissioner Richardson,
I-
if we could just let Commissioner Max Bauer make her statement and we can come to you after this thing.
Anyway, I did make a motion to the Parks Board asking them to open up the pool or direct the director to open up the pool free to the public, several times a year, leaving it basically to the director's discretion, and I was voted down. Twin Lakes is not available to everybody. At least it hasn't been, although I do have it on the next Parks and Rec meeting for discussion. I went out there, didn't know that the thing was going to close at 5 o'clock and that I was going to be asked to leave. But I was out there in the afternoon with my husband. My husband was in the water, and the park closed, and I was asked to leave. I went home and got my badge and went back and looked and said, what's going on? No, these parks are not open to everybody. Should they be? Absolutely.
Well, they are open to everybody, Commissioner. I beg to disagree.
Free. He said free.
Twin Lakes is open to everybody. Everybody. You don't even have to live in this county to go there. They're not open 365 days a year, 24 hours a day to everybody. And I understand your argument, but I don't think it's fair to say they're not open to everybody. They are open to everybody in this county. If there's not some kind of a group there tonight, I could walk over there right now and walk in.
If there's not some kind of group.
Correct. But the statement that they're not open to everybody, they are. They're not open to everybody 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And I agree with you on that.
Okay, Commissioner Henschel.
Jason, say it's 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, my 3 little kids, 10 and under, want to go swimming. How do I find out if we can go use the Civic Center pool?
Online, I think.
Typically, if you have 3 o'clock on a Saturday, you have a couple different options. You can either check online at our website, www.grandtraverse.org/parks, and you can just click on the user schedule there, or you can call the pool. If we have enough staffing, we've made some cuts to our staffing at the pool after trying to ensure some fiscal responsibility. We've made some cuts to staffing, and if a staff's available, they'll answer the phone. If you call the pool hotline, there's also a voicemail message that will give you the information for that day.
Okay, because I've been in this exact situation. That's why I bring it up. Is I tried the website and it didn't have pool hours, and I tried the phone and I just got an outdated phone message. So
we'll see if we can clarify that website then.
Okay,
be happy to do that.
Good. All right, we have Commissioner Richardson, and then Commissioner Lemko.
It's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde up here. Half of us are saying, we should be using these as our parks as profit centers, and the other half are saying, well, they ought to be free to everything. I think he's trying to balance. A pool is not a cheap thing to run, and it's appropriate that user fees are asked for. It may also be appropriate, since it is actually the only public pool in the entire county, that maybe the user fees don't cover every bit of the cost. Certainly, if we privatize the pool, as been suggested by you, Commissioner Max Bauer, among others, certainly it will not be free then. If we take the approach of turning Twin Lakes into a private resort, which would make lots of money, that might be great for the bottom line of the county, but is it going to be available to everybody? I don't think so. Maybe if you have enough money in your pocket, it'll be available.
Okay, Commissioner.
So, I mean, it's like, we're trying to balance here access to parks with trying to find a way to maybe help them pay for themselves. And I'm not sure where the Commissioner's trying to go with this.
Okay, Commissioner Lemko.
First of all, the only thing we're really here to discuss is whether or not we want to approve the $50,000 reduction in the budget.
That's right.
That's the bottom line. My recommendation is all these other issues, I would like to see us do a special meeting just to be able to come together to determine what is the best way to provide for parks and recreation for our community. And leave it not as part of our budget process, but part of the discussion process at another special meeting, whatever we want to do. Okay. Just my point.
Good point. Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, You know, I've sat here 14 years, and prior to my getting here, the decision was made that the Twin Lakes had to pay for itself, and the Civic Center pool had to pay for itself. Every year, we have multiple meetings, joint meetings with Parks and Recreation Board, and Parks and Recreation Board, at least in my opinion, overall, does a great job. You know, I appreciate the fact that they were asked to make a $50,000 reduction in their budget. They took it upon themselves to bring us a balanced budget with a $50,000 request in it. What I have seen, particularly over the last 5 years, is time and time again that the Parks and Recreation Board comes to us with a recommendation which meets the request, and this board sits here and overrides their decisions. Over and over and again in the last 5 years. And if there's anything that's inappropriate, that's it. We've charged the Parks and Recreation Commission with operating our park system and operating the budget within the constraints that we give them. We asked them for a $50,000 reduction. They brought us a budget with the $50,000 reduction. As far as I'm concerned, I would make a motion that we approve the budget as outlined by the Parks and Recreation Director and provided to us.
I think we came up with a consensus, unless we want to take this to a vote, that we would not address
Only if we're going to,
any particular budget.
change the budget as it was presented. The budget that was
We were gonna-
provided to us is right.
Yeah, we were going to take the totality of the discussions and
That's fine. I
deliberate.
just,
If-
we
if that
shouldn't
would
be
more
discussing
appropriate.
this thing all night.
All right, so you withdraw your motion?
Sure.
Okay, all right. If I could speak
I think
just,
Jason had a comment.
all right, let me speak. Well, I just have one question. I apologize. I'm being chairman, you know, you're last or never. so.
Last or never.
By all means.
Do we have a contractual contract with termination time for the caretaker and for the person out in Power Island?
Both of those positions are non-contract.
Are they employed at will, or what are they employed?
Non-contract
They are non-contract employees?
Correct.
So they're employed by Grand Traverse County?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought they were contracted. Okay, all right. Did you want to respond to anything? And then I just want to place the audience and, I believe, the commission on notice on our original agreement when we set the meeting at 3 that we were going to adjourn at 6 and follow the rest of the agenda item tomorrow night starting at 6 p.m. So go ahead.
I just have one other small comment, and Commissioner Lemkool kind of led into, I guess, my conclusion. Commissioner Lemkool, you wanted to determine whether or not the Parks and Recreation Commission is a viable commission and whether they're fulfilling their mission. That's something that the Parks and Recreation Commission is insightful enough to ask of themselves. Within their strategic plan, they've outlined the necessity of a needs analysis. And in doing so, we're actually collaborating with TCAPs, with the city, with a variety of townships and private recreation providers. And that question's been asked, and that's something that we have a committee that's been meeting for the past 8 to 9 months. And there are some results that we will be discussing at a meeting sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So they've taken upon themselves to determine and investigate whether or not Parks and Recreation, as it exists in Grand Traverse County, within the city, within the townships, is worthwhile, or if we need to look at a different construct and possibly look at a paradigm shift in the community to find a different way to offer Parks and Recreation services. So they're already working on that. The other thing is, I just wanted to say in closing, Dennis and Dean suggested a $50,000 reduction in our general fund allocation. I'm confident in the numbers that I put forth to the Parks and Recreation Commission. The Parks and Recreation Commission voted last week to approve that budget, so I'm not asking for anything additional, and I look forward to a budget in 2012.
All right, great. Any final comments or questions for Jason? All right. I guess the next question, thank you, Jason. The next question I have for Dennis and Danny is that next is facilities, and do you think that can be completed within 10 minutes, or should we just adjourn?
Well, you have a number of people here that have come here and stayed for
understand
that issue, so my suggestion would be to start the discussion. The only reason that the facilities department, that we put it on the budget, was to have a mechanism to discuss the custodial issue. You may want to try to deal with the custodial issue as a suggestion tonight, and then other issues with facilities we could do tomorrow night if there are other issues the commissioners had.
Yeah, I just want to have it, I just want to make sure everyone understood that it was our intent to adjourn at 6. And for those folks that, we're just going to have a continuation discussion on the budget for tomorrow. So those folks that were kind enough to be here,
Mr. Chair?
we may have a different situation for tomorrow night. But, Commissioner Maxbauer and then Commissioner Fleece.
If we're not going to have time for Commission on Aging, I think we should at least let them know they've been sitting here and that we would welcome them to return tomorrow night.
Yes.
Well, that's true, I think, of everybody.
Everybody has.
There are other people here as well.
All right.
And MSU.
Sure. And Commissioner Fleece.
I would respectfully ask that we don't start the custodial conversation tonight. It's not fair to the personnel. Huh?
It's only 10 minutes, and I agree.
Yeah, it's not fair to the personnel, and that's a subject that I don't want to be hurried on.
Right, and I agree. Commissioner Richardson?
What we could do is we could take one of the less controversial, less time-consuming departments, like perhaps...
Is there one?
Well,
Commission on Aging is pointing to her.
MSU Extension or Commission on Aging, either one perhaps.
Well, both of those, I think, will have some discussion.
I don't see anything you can do in 10 minutes.
Well, yeah, I think you could, quite frankly, I think you could do the presentation from Jason Torrey. That's not in the budget, but what he was asked to do by commissioners was to provide you with an explanation of what needs to be done to upgrade our 911 system, and I think he could probably do that in 10 minutes. You don't think so, Jason? Okay, he says no.
So let's have a motion to adjourn. Motion by Lemko.
Support.
Seconded by Fleece to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Next,
All right.
next waterboarding starts at 7.